Chapter 1323. Guan Yanhong looked intently in the direction that Yi Yu had left. He stood up and said, "Let's go." But Yi Tian was a little indignant. "She hasn't agreed to it yet. Are we just going to leave like that?" Guan Yanhong shook his head and replied, "It's true that she doesn't have the ability. It's not like you don't know how Shen Luo treats her. We'll talk about this another time. Is that all right?" "Yeah, I have my ways." Yi Tian nodded her head when she heard that, and walked out with Guan Yanhong. When she heard the door close, Yi Yu leaned against the wall of the corridor. Her eyes turned cold. She wants Shen Luo and semen. Could it be that she wants to impregnate Guan Kui? But Guan Kui can't even take care of herself now. How can she take care of a child? Or perhaps she simply wants Shen Luo's child? Unfortunately, the relationship between her and Shen Luo was merely an empty title. Even if they were a real couple, there wouldn't be a wife who would be so magnanimous as to allow another woman to take her husband's semen. Guan Kui. It was a name that she hadn't heard in a long time. In the short span of a day, she had heard it a few times. It had indeed been a long time since she had seen her. Yi Yu walked back to her room and took out her cell phone to call the person she could trust the most at the moment, Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian was at work. It hadn't been easy for her to return to her normal routine. Even if she was as busy as a dog, she couldn't be in a good mood. Just as she was excitedly discussing the plot with the cartoonist, her cell phone rang. It was Yi Yu. She couldn't afford to be distracted in the office, but it was rare for Yi Yu to call her. Yi Qianqian didn't want to hang up. He pressed the mute button on his phone for the time being, and then walked out. She called back. Yi Yu's call was quickly picked up. "Hello, Yi Yu. What's up?" Yi Qianqian was very concerned about her younger sister. Her voice was low as she looked around and replied, "I'm at work." Yi Yu could tell from her voice that she had snuck out to make the call. Her heart warmed as she said, "Sister, I'd like to go to Kingstown to rely on you for a while. Is that okay?" She hadn't expected Yi Yu to make such a decision. However, joy quickly filled her heart and she replied, "That's great. I've long since persuaded you to come to Kingstown to stay with me. You see, you don't have anyone to take care of you in the capital. If you come over, I'll have company. I'm living alone now, and I'm dying of boredom." "You live alone?" Yi Yu was a little surprised. "Don't you have a roommate? Isn't Yu Lily living with you?" "Hey, let's not talk about it. We agreed to be single happily, but this guy got married secretly. He got his marriage certificate and is preparing for the wedding. Hey, when are you coming?" "I'll be there tonight. I'll call you when I get there," Yi Yu replied. Yi Qianqian was even more shocked and asked, "Why is it so sudden? Did something happen?" She had grown up in the capital and had a strong sense of belonging there. Even though she no longer lived with Yi Tian, she had no intention of leaving the capital. When she wasn't filming or working, Yi Yu lived in the capital. This was a first for her to come to Kingstown to stay with her. There had to be something going on. Chapter 1324. "Sure." Yi Qianqian agreed. "Remember to give me a call when you arrive." "Yeah." Yi Qianqian had just hung up when a voice came from the side. "How dare you be so daring? You'll get your pay deducted." The voice was serious and pretended to be serious. That gave Yi Qianqian a fright. When she turned around, she saw a big smile on his face. There was no hint of warning or unhappiness in his expression. Short hair and delicate features. Who else could it be but Yu Lily? Yi Qianqian breathed a sigh of relief. She ran up and pinched Yu Lily's hand mercilessly. "You scared me to death." Yu Lily laughed and dodged to the side. "If you don't do anything wrong, you won't be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door. What are you afraid of? But your sister is coming to Kingstown. Isn't her hand injured? Has it recovered?" Yi Qianqian didn't know much. She only knew that Yu Lily had been discharged from the hospital. After telling Yu Lily about the general situation, she looked at Yu Lily's rosy face and said, "Hey Yu, I thought you and Oming were really going to break up. I didn't expect you to become my boss's wife, and a superior at that. I'm so jealous." Yu Lily smiled and took her arm. "Don't be jealous. Let's go. I'll treat you to afternoon tea. I still have to go to work." "It's fine. Just let me know." Yu Lily took her arm and walked in. After greeting the supervisor, the two of them swaggered out of the office, under the envious gazes. Because of her face, the whole world knew that Yu Lily had become the boss's wife in Eurasia. The company was in an uproar. However, Yu Lily and Yi Qianqian didn't know that. The two of them arrived at a cafe that they frequented in the past. After ordering some snacks, Yu Lily sat down solemnly and looked at Yi Qianqian. She asked, "Sixixi, are we good friends?" Yi Qianqian was shocked by her serious look. She looked at her for a long time and asked hesitantly, "Did you cause trouble? Am I that kind of person?" "Yes." Yi Qianqian nodded her head seriously. Yu Lily was speechless. "What happened to you? Did you do something wrong?" Yu Lily was speechless when she saw Yi Qianqian's nonchalant expression. She took out a pink envelope from her handbag and handed it to Yi Qianqian. "I've committed a crime and stepped into the grave of love. I'm here to send you an invitation. Would you like to attend the ceremony to announce my love?" When Yi Qianqian received the pink invitation card, her heart calmed down. She couldn't help but laugh. She tore open the envelope and took out the invitation card inside. She said, "It's really going to be settled. D***it. Didn't you say it wouldn't be so fast? Why did you suddenly get over it?" My father-in-law said that it's too troublesome to introduce myself to people every day. I'll just have a one-off wedding and introduce myself to the public." Yi Qianqian couldn't help but give her father-in-law a thumbs up. "Your father-in-law is amazing. Didn't your mother-in-law dislike you? How is she now?" Thinking of Qiao Ziqing, Yu Lily smiled and said, "She only has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. She's actually quite cute." Yi Qianqian breathed a sigh of relief and said, "That's great. Congratulations. But Qianqian, I have another matter that I'm not sure if I should tell my mother-in-law." "What is it?" "A few days ago, Oming took me for a checkup. The doctor said that it might be difficult for me to get pregnant. Chapter 1325. Yi Qianqian was stunned. "What do you mean by it's very difficult to get pregnant?" "The doctor said that the wall of my uterus is a little thin, so the possibility of pregnancy is a little low." Yu Lily was a little scared and looked at Yi Qianqian in front of her. "What if I really can't give birth in the future? My mother-in-law will despise me. She will definitely say, 'Oh, you hen who can't lay eggs. Don't hog the manger in my house. Hurry up and divorce and find another man. You're not worthy of our Oming.'" The more Yu Lily thought about it, the more anxious she became. Her heart, which was already beating like a drum, began to beat even faster. "If that's the case, what should I do?" Yi Qianqian was amused by her and asked, "How can you have such a vivid imagination? Did your mother-in-law say something like that before?" Yu Lily nodded. "That's how she talks. I'm a little afraid of her." "What are you afraid of? Didn't you say that she has a sharp tongue but a soft heart? Why don't you just listen to her with one ear and go out with the other?" Yu Lily shook her head and said, "I don't know this feeling. If I really can't have a baby, my mother-in-law is a small matter. Oming is the only son. If I really can't have a baby, then their family will have no descendants. I'm so scared." Yi Qianqian was a little nervous after hearing what she said. "That makes sense. If you really cause their family to be without descendants, you will be guilty of a grave sin." Yu Lily felt even more uneasy. She took out the examination report from her bag and handed it to Yi Qianqian. "Didn't you study medicine in university? Take a look at it for me." Yi Qianqian took it from him. As she read through it, she said, "What the f***ck would I know? It's not like I'm a gynecologist. Does your husband know about this?" "I know." "What attitude?" "He said he didn't mind." Oming didn't mind, but she did. In the deepest part of Yu Lily's heart, she sincerely felt that her current situation was retribution, the legendary retribution in the present. The twins she had killed 5 years ago had come to take revenge. That was why she was in this state. It was said that women who had an abortion would have very bad luck. They would be haunted by bad luck, and the possibility of suffering from depression was also very high. Yu Lily had experienced it all in the past few years. Her luck was really terrible. Not only was he cheated of all his assets, but he also had to deal with all kinds of troubles. As for depression, There was indeed a period of time when she was very depressed. She had encountered all of these things, so she wouldn't be surprised even if something strange happened. She told Yi Chantian what she was thinking. She had thought that Yi Chantian would comfort her and enlighten her. Unexpectedly, Yi Chantian laughed mercilessly and said, "Say, miss you, can your imagination get any richer? To be able to add so much drama to such a matter, you're really amazing." Yu Lily asked, "Don't you think it's possible? You don't know how unlucky I've been for the past few years. Only this year did my luck start to turn. Sigh, I'm really a little scared. Last time, I fainted due to menstrual pain. It should be really difficult to get pregnant." Chapter 1326. Yu Lily pouted her lips and said, "Superstition. Aren't you the same? You're here for revenge. If ghosts really existed in this world, Shun Luo, and that be asterisk starred, would have died a long time ago. Would it have been your turn?" Yi Chantian didn't bother to be polite and said, "Since you know that it's superstition, you should keep your feelings to yourself. Don't scare yourself." Yu Lily was speechless. The desserts were finally served. Yu Lily and Yi Chantian chatted as they ate. There were no fixed topics for women to talk about. The topic kept changing, and the two of them chatted happily. They chatted all the way until it was dinner time before Oming called. She didn't know when Oming had changed Yu Lily's contact on her phone. It had been changed from Recho to a simple but meaningful word, hubby. When she saw that word, Yu Lily's mood inexplicably improved. She answered the call and said, "Hello. Where are you? I'll come pick you up." Oming was driving. The weather had been getting hotter and better. The afterglow of the setting sun was long and scattered across the car. It passed through the window and onto his body, making him feel warm. "I'm in a cafe near Eurasia with Chantian," Yu Lily said with a smile, not avoiding him at all. Yi Chantian saw the blissful smile on Yu Lily's face. She sat in the chair, filled with grief and indignation. At the same time, she was filled with envy. Although Yi Chantian didn't know much about Yu Lily's involvement with Oming, she could feel Yu Lily's love for him from the time they had spent together. For a man like Oming to be blind and still chase after her all the way to Fujian to find her, his sincerity for her could be seen. Sigh. This must be love. Yi Chantian counted with her fingers. She was almost 26 years old. She had been single for so many years. It was really a little sad. Yu Lily didn't know what Oming and Yu Lily were talking about. Her smile grew wider and wider. When she heard the laughter, Yi Chantian felt even more abused. She said, "Lily, can you restrain yourself in front of a single dog?" Yu Lily laughed unceremoniously and said, "Wait a minute." It was obvious that this sentence was directed at the person on the phone. Yu Lily looked at Yi Chantian and said, "Tonight, my man is going to take me to a gathering between his brothers. Do you want to come along? Oming has a good brother named Luo Zhan. He's not bad looking and has a good temper." "Ah," you said. "It's a gathering between your husband's brothers. Why would I go? I'm not that desperate for men," she said. "Chantian is really," Yi Chantian said. Luo Lily. He is. Luo Zhan is really not bad. It wasn't easy for him to break up with his girlfriend. Of course, I have to make my move quickly." Yu Lily's tone was a little smug. She then egged Yi Chantian on and said, "Really, let's go together. It's a group of men, and I'm the only woman. It'll be very boring." "Second brother and his wife are going too," Oming reminded her kindly. Yu Lily pretended not to hear him and said to Yi Chantian, "Just treat it like you're accompanying me." Chapter 1327. It doesn't matter. We can have dinner together there. Let's go. Yu Lily stood up and held Yi Chantian's hand. "It's not a big party. Let's just be casual." Oming had heard everything. He said helplessly, "I'm at Eurasia. I'm at the crossroads. Come out quickly." "Well, my man is here. Let's go." Yu Lily pulled Yi Chantian up. She didn't know that her greeting had completely pleased the man on the other side of the phone. Her man, she called him so smoothly. Oming smiled, and his beautiful almond-shaped eyes glanced at the rearview mirror above his head. At a glance, he saw his own happy expression. "Yes, so handsome." Yu Lily paid the bill and walked out with Yi Chantian. She saw Oming's black car from afar. It was a Lamborghini with a flashy design. Yi Qianqian only took one look and felt that Yu Lily was not someone she could match. Yu Lily regarded her as a friend. Yi Qianqian could feel it, but the gap between them seemed a little too big. Yi Qianqian thought to herself. She felt a little inferior and felt that something was wrong. Yu Lily enthusiastically pulled her into the car. Yi Qianqian temporarily retreated and said, "How about I don't go? I remember that I still have a lot of work to do, and I haven't finished a lot of sketches." Yu Lily heard that and waved her hand. "It's okay. Anyway, you always procrastinate. I know you. Come on. If you can't fight, I'll help you. Let's go." "No, this is just an excuse, big sister. The most important thing is, as a poor little editor, will people think that I'm fishing for a rich man if I go there?" Yi Qianqian really felt that it was inappropriate and refused again. "Lily. Oh, let's go." Yu Lily pulled her down and closed the door. "Drive." In the driver's seat, Oming glanced at the rearview mirror and chuckled. "Just go and have some fun. It doesn't matter if you don't know anyone. You can play with Yu Lily and keep her company." It just so happened that Luo Zhan, an old single dog in his 30s, also needed a young and beautiful single dog to stimulate him. Soon, they arrived at the #1 palace. After throwing the car key to the valet, Oming led the two women in. The few brothers gathered together. In fact, there wasn't anything important. They just sat together, drank, chatted, and bullied each other. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi had arrived a long time ago, sitting on the sofa eating fruit. Luo Zhan alone grabbed the microphone and slowly picked a song. Finally, he picked a love song, which was a classic song by Wang Jie and Zhao Shuer. Luo Zhan excitedly handed the microphone to Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi. "Sing, sing." Li Xiqing grabbed the microphone and saw the song. He laughed and said, "What are you thinking? I don't sing this kind of song." Luo Zhan had expected it, and immediately went to change the song. It was Anita Mui and Jackie Chung's "It's Hard to Love." "No." Su Qianxi also refused. "Go away. I want to sing something nice, not something so old." "Luo Zhan, you don't understand. The older it is, the more classic it is. And in front of a single dog, you can only sing this kind of song." Chapter 1328. Luo Zhan suddenly felt that he had received a critical hit. He looked at Su Qianxi with grief and indignation and roared, "Sister-in-law, do you know that you have been led astray by him? You weren't like this before." Su Qianxi smiled and said, "What was I like before? In the past, when they bullied me, you never participated." Luo Zhan's face was full of pain. Su Qianxi suddenly realized and said seriously, "I won't do it again. Whenever you want to be bullied, tell me, and I will come right away." "Luo Zhan, what are you playing?" Oming's voice drifted over. Behind him was Yu Lily and an unfamiliar girl. Luo Zhan immediately looked at Yi Qianqian and asked, "Who is this?" "This is my good friend. Her name is Yi Qianqian," Yu Lily introduced. She then whispered, 26 years old, single. Luo Zhan immediately understood. Yu Lily wanted to introduce a partner to him. It wasn't that Yi Qianqian hadn't been to such occasions before. Other than Yu Lily, the only other person she knew was Su Qianxi. Looking at Su Qianxi, Yi Qianqian was excited. Su Qianxi had left a deep impression on many people. This woman was simply magnificent. As if sensing Yi Qianqian's gaze, Su Qianxi turned her head to look at her. She smiled at her and asked, "Are you coming over to sing?" Yi Qianqian almost screamed. She hadn't expected her to be so approachable. Su Qianxi saw that she had a reaction, so she extended the microphone and said, "Come here." Yi Qianqian felt a little feverish. She walked over and took the microphone. Halfway through the song, Yu Lily cleverly pressed the reprise button. Yu Lily knew that Yi Qianqian was a microphone hog. Luo Zhan was also a microphone hog, which was also recognized by everyone. Luo Zhan didn't care who he sang with at all. What he cared about was that no one sang with him. Now that there was someone, she didn't act pretentious. After the prelude was played, she opened her mouth and sang, "I'll give you a CD of the past." Luo Zhan's voice was very low, very magnetic, and very accurate. At first glance, it was impossible to tell whether it was an original singer or a self-sung one. People who could sing all had some sort of vocal fetish. Yi Qianqian was no exception. Hearing this voice, she immediately turned to look at Luo Zhan. Damn it! This man wasn't particularly handsome, but when he sang, his charm was unparalleled. Yi Qianqian felt her heart melt. But when it was her turn, she didn't hesitate and continued singing the female part. Yi Qianqian's voice was a little thin. It sounded hollow, but it gave everyone goosebumps. It was the first time that Luo Zhan was amazed by a stranger's voice, and he became excited all of a sudden. After the song was over, Luo Zhan said in surprise, "That's amazing. Have you ever learned music?" Yi Qianqian was a little embarrassed. "I was in the choir when I was in high school." "Great. Again." It was rare for Luo Zhan to meet someone who could sing, and she sang much better than Yu Lili and Su Qianxi. However, Luo Zhan did not have the guts to say this. She rolled her eyes and whispered in his ear, "Why don't we go for a picnic tomorrow?" Oming raised his eyebrows slightly. "What do you want?" "To relax. I'll bring Qianqian and Luo Zhan. Anyway, tomorrow is the weekend." As Yu Lili spoke, she had already leaned over and said, "Look at Luo Zhan. He's so old. How pitiful." Chapter 1329. What's there to ask? Just let me know. You'll bring Luo Zhan tomorrow, and I'll bring Qianqian. Let Qianqian bring the child. Well, they're on the same side anyway, right? Even if the two of them aren't together, or even if they're not interested in each other, it's good to just have fun. Yu Lili's mind was full of wishful thinking. While chatting, she didn't forget to leave a good impression on them. From time to time, she praised Luo Zhan for being responsible, and Yi Qianqian for being virtuous. In short, in the eyes of both sides, Yu Lili was a shill. That night, everyone had a great time. Yu Lili and Oming and Su Qianxi went the same way. When they got back to Yuxiu, the two cars went their separate ways. When they got home, Yu Lili took a shower. Her mind was filled with plans for the picnic the next day. After the shower, Yu Lili rubbed her hair as she sat on the bed. After thinking for a long time, she said, "Oming, do you think they'll think I'm a busybody? Their parents aren't worried about it, so I'm the only one doing it." However, Yu Lili was met with silence. Yu Lili turned her head, but Oming was nowhere to be seen. "Oming." As soon as Yu Lili said that, she felt a grip around her waist. Oming's hands circled her waist as he replied, "Yes, but you're also thinking about their future happiness. It seems like Luo Zhan has a good impression of you as a friend." "Yeah, I think so too." After Oming said that, Yu Lili felt that the situation was even more promising. Seeing the excitement in Yu Lili's eyes, Oming was too embarrassed to tell her that Luo Zhan treated everyone the same way. "Have you showered?" Yu Lili turned her head and looked at him. Oming smiled and leaned over. "Yes, I have. If you don't believe me, you can smell it." "No, go away." Yu Lili pushed the towel forward and said with a look of disgust, "I still have to dry my hair. Don't come so close." "I'll help you." With that, Oming went to get the hairdryer and asked, "What's the date today?" "The 13th. Yu Lili looked at the time and nodded. "The 13th. What's the matter?" "Oh," Oming replied. Without saying anything else, he began to blow dry Yu Lili's hair. Yu Lili found that he was a little absent-minded. When he was drying his hair, he only aimed at one spot. Yu Lili nudged him gently and asked, "What's wrong?" Oming came back to his senses and touched her hair. It was already half dry. He shook his head and continued to help her dry her hair before putting the hairdryer away. Then, he took off his slippers and climbed onto the bed. He carried her with one arm and whispered, "It's your ovulation period these few days. Let's give it a try." Yu Lili was surprised. "How did you know?" "I just calculated it." Oming leaned forward and kissed her on the cheek. "Remember to pay attention to your diet these few days. Asterisk 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 asterisk." The raging flames burned silently. The room was filled with charm, tenderness, and uncontrollable tenderness. Chapter 1330. She had gone to play with Oming and Yu Lili last night, so she left the children at the old mansion. Today's activity was suitable for children. Su Qianxi got up at 6 o'clock and rushed to the old mansion to wake the children up. Hearing that they were going on a picnic, The children were excited. After all, it had been a while since they last went out to play. One by one, they began to dress themselves in beautiful clothes and excitedly got ready to go. Such a scene also woke up Li Jinan, who rarely went home to relax. When he got up, he saw that the children were well dressed and asked with a smile, "What are you going to do, Uncle?" Li Jianhua saw Li Jinan and ran toward him, holding out her arms. Hug. Li Jinan picked up his niece and asked, "Where are Daddy and Mommy going to take you to play?" "To a picnic." And Auntie Lily, Uncle Oming, Uncle Luozhan, and many other uncles and aunties. "Oh yes, Mommy." Li Jianhua looked at Su Qianxi and said, "Will Uncle Lu go? I haven't seen Uncle Lu for a long time. I miss him so much." A child's words carried no harm. When the childish voice called Uncle Lu, Li Xiqing, who was sitting on the sofa, tilted his head slightly and looked over. When Su Qianxi heard that, she subconsciously looked at Li Xiqing. She knew that Li Xiqing didn't like to hear Lu Yihan's name. Therefore, when she was at home, she would rarely mention this person. Li Jianhua didn't notice the strangeness of the adults and said, "Uncle Lu used to come to play with us often. Why hasn't he come recently? Mommy, let's go play with Uncle Lu, okay?" When Su Qianxi heard that, she subconsciously looked at Li Xiqing and said to her daughter, "Uncle Lu has been very busy recently. He has to do business to earn money to marry a wife. When Uncle Lu is free, Mommy will let him come to see you again." Oh, the child's world was actually very simple. When she heard her mother say that, she nodded. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen didn't say anything. The two brothers looked at each other, as if they had already seen through each other's eyes. "Uncle, do you want to go with us? There are quite a lot of friends today. Luozhan and Oming are going. Why don't you go with them?" Su Qianxi suggested. "You haven't had a vacation in a long time, right?" It was true that Li Jinan hadn't had a vacation in a long time, but he didn't like crowded places. Even though he knew all the people who were going, it was pointless for him to go and join in the fun. Li Xiqing looked at Li Jinan's expression and knew what he was thinking. He stood up and said firmly, "Let's go together. At the same time, you can also help me look after my child." Li Jinan knew his brother very well. The two boys worshipped him very much. In this way, they only had the little princess by their side. Without the two burdens, the couple could do some things they liked to do. Li Jinan seemed to have seen through everything and said, "All right then. Let's go together. Come, Uncle will go and get changed." Li Jianhua cheered. "Let's go. Long live Uncle." There was one more person in the group. The driver, Yang, drove Su Qianxi's big RV, and soon arrived at the destination with the big family. Chapter 1331. Seeing Su Qianxi coming from a distance, Yu Lily looked a little excited and waved at them. Today, Yu Lily was dressed very casually, wearing a bright red sportswear, which made her white and beautiful skin look more energetic. Oming was wearing the same men's version of sportswear. Obviously, it was a couple's outfit. Su Qianxi looked at their clothes and then looked at her own, suddenly feeling that there was too little affection between them. Couple's outfit so beautiful. At this moment, Oming was carrying a large black backpack. He was tall and had long legs. Standing next to Yu Lily, he looked down at her with a smile, his eyes gentle and affectionate. Su Qianxi saw them like this and felt a little emotional. How difficult it was for these two people. She had seen it all the way. Now they were finally happy. The wedding would be held next month. At that time, the grand scene would definitely be an eye-opener for them. Yu Lily did not notice that Oming was looking at her behind her. After waving at Su Qianxi, she turned and walked in the direction of Yi Qianqian. Behind Yi Qianqian, there was a girl who looked very young and beautiful. It seemed that she was about the same age as Yi Qianqian. At first glance, she looked very similar to Yi Qianqian. However, it was obvious that they were not the same person. The temperament was very different, and the girl looked a bit familiar. It should be a star? Su Qianxi had some impression of this girl, but Li Jinan, who ran an entertainment company, should know people in the entertainment industry. Without turning her head, Su Qianxi said to Li Jinan behind her, "Uncle, who is that girl? Do you know her?" However, she did not wait for Li Jinan's answer. Su Qianxi turned her head and found that Li Jinnan had already disappeared. Li Jianrui and Li Mosen disappeared together. And Li Jianxian and Li Xiqing, the father and son, came over here with 2 big bags. However, where was Li Jinnan? Su Qianxi looked around and saw him from a distance. Li Jianrui and Li Mosen were talking, one tall and one short, very harmonious. Li Jinnan and Luo Zhan did not know what they were talking about. They seemed to turn their heads inadvertently, and then their eyes were fixed. Su Qianxi saw it clearly and followed Li Jinnan's gaze. The target of his gaze, wasn't it the starlet she had wanted to ask about? The starlet also seemed to notice Li Jinnan. Su Qianxi could clearly sense that she was a little uncomfortable. Luo Zhan followed Li Jinnan's gaze and realized that he was looking in the same direction. He nudged him with his elbow and asked, "Do you know him?" "Yeah." Li Jinnan didn't look away as he replied, "This is an artist from my company." Luo Zhan was shocked. What a coincidence. Is Miss Yi an artist? He walked in the direction of Yi Qianqian and Yi Yuyu. His footsteps were steady and his demeanor natural. However, Yi Yuyu wasn't as natural. She stood where she was and forced herself to look calm. When Yi Qianqian saw Li Jinnan, she didn't expect him at all. She opened her eyes and exclaimed, "It's you. Why are you here?" However, after she said that, she immediately thought of Li Xiqing's younger brother, Su Qianxi's brother-in-law. Wasn't he? Chapter 1332. It is quite a coincidence. I didn't expect you to be in Kingstown as well. As Li Jinnan spoke, his gaze only briefly landed on Yi Yuyu. After that, his gaze didn't return to her again. Yi Qianqian smiled and replied, "I work at Eurasian Comics. Of course, I'm in Kingstown. However, you only wanted to come to Kingstown to relax. After staying in the hospital for so long, it's time to come out for a walk. Isn't that right, Yuyu?" When Yi Yuyu heard that, she forced a smile and nodded her head. Li Jinnan finally turned his attention to her. He looked at her injured arm and asked, "Has it recovered?" "GM Li, it's almost healed." Yi Yuyu replied with her head lowered. Yi Yuyu felt a little uncomfortable. Yi Qianqian knew that they had a close relationship, so she could tell at a glance. Luo Zhan had always been insensitive. He looked at her and asked, "Miss Yi, is this your sister?" Yi Qianqian was happy to change the subject. She replied, "Yeah, her name is Yi Yuyu. She was the second female lead in The Lonely Swordsman. Later on, she was injured during the pressure exercise." What a pity. Luo Zhan felt a little sorry for her. What a pity. It was such a good opportunity. Let's not talk about this. Everyone get ready. Let's go play. As he spoke, he rubbed his hands together eagerly. He put his arm around Li Jinnan's back and said, "I haven't played with you in a long time. Come on, let's do it." Li Jinnan seemed to be in a good mood. He smiled and said, "You couldn't beat me in the past. Do you think you can beat me now?" These words were obviously a naked provocation. When Luo Zhan heard that, he was enraged. In a shrill voice he said, "Oh, you're quite proud of yourself. If I don't beat you up today, my surname isn't Luo." The two of them walked off with their arms around each other's shoulders. Yi Qianqian looked at Li Jinnan's retreating back and whispered to Yi Yuyu, "From what I see, your boss treats you really well. Why don't you dump Shen Luo and then go after third young Master Li?" "What are you talking about?" Yi Yuyu bumped into her. Why would such a man like that be interested in a divorced woman? Don't overthink it. He's the boss. It's normal for him to care about his employees. He's not as dramatic as you think. Moreover, Shen Luo and didn't seem to agree to a divorce at all. More importantly, she wasn't good enough for him. A man like Li Jinnan was more suited for a better woman. Yi Yi regretted it. If she had known that Li Jinnan was there, she wouldn't have listened to Yi Qianqian's advice. Li Jinnan had never said anything to her, nor had he given her any hints. But his thoughtfulness and concern always made Yi Yi feel a little uncomfortable. After all, there was such a ridiculous night between them. This made it difficult for Yi Yi to treat this man normally, although it was very likely that she was thinking too much. This man might be like this to everyone. Yi Yu's mind was filled with so many thoughts that she didn't notice her surroundings. Yu Lily had already brought a little girl to their side. She led the way and said, Ursa, this is Auntie Chantian. Li Jianyue widened her big eyes and looked at Yi Chantian like black grapes. She obediently and sweetly greeted, Hello, Auntie Chantian. This is Aunt Yu. Chapter 1333. I don't know. Come on, let's go find your mother. Yu Lily held the little girl's hand and smiled. Yi Chantian saw that Li Jianyue's face was somewhat similar to Su Qianxi's. She was surprised and said, Is this Su Qianxi's daughter? Wow, she's so cute. She doesn't even post pictures on Weibo. You know, she's not on the internet either. I didn't expect this little girl to be so beautiful. Yi Chantian squatted down and looked at Li Jianyue. She asked with a smile, What's your name? Li Jianyue had never been afraid of strangers. When she saw that Yi Chantian liked her, she smiled happily and replied, Auntie, my name is Li Jianyue. I'm 5 years old this year. Time flies. Yi Chantian reached out to her. Can I give you a hug? Li Jianyue liked to be hugged by adults. When she heard Yi Chantian's words, she immediately reached out. Yi Chantian happily picked up the child and asked, Lily, where is her mother? I don't know. I don't know where my man is. Yu Lily picked up her cell phone and called Oh Ming, but no one answered. The next second, Yu Lily's cell phone rang. It was Su Qianxi. Hello, Chantian. Okay. She's here. She's looking for her mother. Okay, we'll go in now. Wait for us. Yu Lily quickly hung up the phone and led them into the badminton court. The sun was getting brighter. The weather was good. No matter how bright the spring sun was, it was not cruel. Su Qianxi was wearing a white sports suit today. Her long hair was tied into a ponytail. She looked youthful and energetic. When she saw Yu Lily and the others coming over, she waved at them and said, Ursu, go play with your brothers. Li Ursu was a little unhappy when she heard that. But when she turned her head and saw that Li Mosin and Li Jianxian were also playing, the resentment on her face immediately changed, and she struggled to get off Yi Chantian. As soon as Yi Chantian put her down, Li Jianyue immediately ran toward Li Mosin and Li Jianxian. Brother, I want to play too. Li Jianyue's voice was very loud, and her sweet voice was very eye-catching. The adults who were playing ball turned their heads when they heard the little girl's voice. They could not help but laugh when they saw the little girl's halting footsteps. The child has grown up. Luo Zhan grabbed the ball and served it to the opposite side. Second brother, the child is 5 years old. Do you and sister-in-law have any plans to have a second child? Li Xiqing caught the ball and sent it back with a swing of his racket. He said, I do have plans, but my wife doesn't want to give birth. TSK, Luo Zhan shook his head. She must have been traumatized. When she gave birth to these two guys, sister-in-law went into the delivery room alone. At that time, if it weren't for third brother, I'm afraid sister-in-law wouldn't have been able to bear it. You heartless man. The physical strength of an otaku had always been worrying. As Luo Zhan spoke, he was already panting. Li Xiqing, on the other hand, was much calmer. Seeing him panting like a dog, Li Xiqing laughed and said, Are you that tired? I'm a little tired. Luo Zhan stopped and said, Take a break. Li Xiqing put the racket away and went to the side to get a bottle of water. He threw it to Luo Zhan. Your mother hasn't urged you to go on a blind date recently? Luo Zhan took the water and let out a long breath. She did. I had no choice. I didn't find a suitable one. Chapter 1334. Are you going to be single like this? He also unscrewed the cap himself. Although he was asking Luo Zhan, he was looking in the direction of Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi was playing with Li Jinan. She was wearing a sun hat and had a big smile on her face. She was playing with Li Jinan. Luo Zhan replied, Not only that, but fortunately, my mother didn't force a wife on me like your grandfather. Drinking water, Luo Zhan immediately noticed where Li Xiqing was looking. Third brother is deliberately letting her win. Of course, Li Xiqing knew that, but he didn't think it was a problem. He said, Of course. Luo Zhan chuckled and looked at Li Jinan while drinking water. Dealing with Su Qianxi, Li Jinan was obviously at ease, but he still dropped the ball from time to time, which made Su Qianxi laugh. Brother-in-law, why are you getting weaker and weaker? Although you are busy with work, You still need to exercise. Su Qianxi tossed the badminton in her hand and shouted, "Watch!" Li Jinnan was about to reply, but he hadn't expected her to start serving so suddenly. He couldn't help but laugh. Following that, he caught the ball without any hesitation and said, "I should say that you've improved too quickly. Indeed, now that second brother is back, you're in a good mood. Everything becomes better." "Ha," she laughed. "It's not like your second brother is practicing with me." As soon as the ball was launched, the shuttlecock missed the net and fell to the ground less than a step behind the net. Li Jinnan didn't get it, so he had to accept his fate and pick up the ball. With a helpless smile on his face, the helpless tenderness in his eyes unintentionally flowed out. It was extremely subtle, but Yi Yu could vaguely sense that he treated her differently. This was something that Li Jinnan had never done with her before. Although he was concerned about her, the way he looked at her was also very calm. Other than the fact that he cared a little more than an ordinary person, he didn't seem to have any special feelings for her. Su Xiai, on the other hand, was obviously not the case. Because she was the stepdaughter of the Guan family, and because she had been brought up by her mother, Yi Yu had always been observant in the snow fox from a young age. What her uncle liked, what her mother liked, or what they didn't like or what they hated, she could always sense it immediately. At that moment, she could clearly sense Li Jinnan's emotions. It was a kind of forbearance, but it was a real emotion. Kinship. That was not all. Yi Yu felt as if she had discovered a huge secret. The deepest part of her heart relaxed slightly. This feeling was as if a thorn had been suddenly pulled out. This feeling of comfort was self-evident. Yi Qianqian followed Yi Yu's gaze and realized that Yi Yu was looking at Li Jinnan. Her heart leaped with joy and she asked, "The more you look at him, the more handsome he looks, right?" "I also think he's very handsome." Yi Yu immediately snapped back to her senses and glanced at Yu Lily. When he realized that Yu Lily wasn't looking in his direction, he said unhappily, "What are you talking about?" "I just happened to be looking in that direction and thinking about something." She looked at Li Jinnan and Su Qianxi and said, "Before second young Master Li came back, it was third young Master Li who stayed by Qianqian's side. If it weren't for third young Master Li, I'm afraid she wouldn't have survived. Therefore, it was normal for them to have some feelings for each other. This was the true meaning of time breeds affection." Chapter 1335. If that was the case, Li Jinnan was probably just wishful thinking. Or perhaps it was difficult for him to express his love. Yi Yu knew that. Yi Qianqian continued. It wasn't easy for Qianqian. She had to support such a big company all by herself. And she had to take care of 2 children. Oh, and her love rival's child. Love rival's child? Aha. You really didn't know? It was such a big deal back then. I thought you should know. Yi Qianqian looked at Yi Yu as if she was a monster. Yi Yu shook her head. I wasn't in the country at that time. Oh, right. Yi Qianqian suddenly remembered. After Guan Kui's incident, Yi Yu had been sent abroad by her stepfather to study. After thinking about it, Yi Qianqian said, "Back then, there was a woman who claimed to be pregnant with second young Master Li's child. She wanted to take over his position while she was pregnant. At that time, Qianqian wasn't pregnant yet, so they almost divorced. When the child with the surname Tang was born, it was discovered that he was mixed race." As Yi Qianqian spoke, she kept an eye on her surroundings. She saw Li Mosen playing in the distance and said, "Do you see that child? He's the son with the surname Tang." Yi Yu looked in the direction that Yi Qianqian was pointing at, and saw a few children. There was a little girl, a little boy who looked similar to the little girl, and a little boy whose skin was a little too fair. She adopted her child? Yeah. I was wondering why the girl had such a big heart. After that, Tang Minjing killed a few people, and almost killed this child. Sigh. How did you know? Such a thing shouldn't have been spread around, right? After all, such a thing was a little too cruel for a child to do. Yi Qianqian looked at her strangely and replied, "Of course not. I asked Lily about it a few days ago, and she told me, you shouldn't tell anyone about it. It's not good for the child." Yi Yu nodded her head, and looked at the children who were playing. Children of 5 or 6 years old were at the age of innocence, but they had almost died at the hands of their biological mother. Would they be traumatized? Hey! After a long greeting, Yi looked up and saw Lily waving in her direction. Come and swim. There is a hot spring here. Everyone looked at Lily. Luo Zhan quickly waved at her and asked, Where's your man? Lily waved her hand and shouted, I don't know. Isn't he with you? Luo Zhan stood up and jokingly shouted, Oh no, you won't be kidnapped by human traffickers, will you? As soon as he said that, everyone laughed. Lily cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, Give me back my man, you human trafficker. Luo Zhan also laughed and shouted, Your man said he doesn't want you anymore. Don't look for him. What a silly joke. Lily's throat was sore from all the shouting, so she turned around and ignored him. However, when he turned around and walked into the hot spring, he felt that something was wrong. Wherever Oming went, he should have said a word. How come he disappeared without any sound at all? Lily suddenly remembered what had happened last time. Last time, he had suddenly disappeared. After that, she heard the news that he had jumped out of the car and was hospitalized. Chapter 1336. The phone rang a few times, but no one answered. Lily began to panic. She looked around and saw that the people behind her were already walking over leisurely. Among the crowd, there was everyone but Oming. The first call had already exceeded the allotted time and automatically hung up. Lily persistently called the second one, but before she could make the call, she heard a voice behind her. Sister-in-law, what are you doing? Luo Zhan swung his racket carelessly as he walked over and said, Are you really calling Oming? Ha ha ha. I'm just kidding. Don't take it seriously. Lily gave him a kick in exasperation and said, Go away. I really don't know where Oming went. Do you know where he is? How would I know? Luo Zhan shrugged his shoulders and didn't even look at Lily as he asked, Can't you get through to him? I did, but no one picked up. Lily frowned and looked at Luo Zhan. She realized that Luo Zhan didn't seem to care, but in fact his eyes were full of mirth. Lily became suspicious and asked, Do you know where he is? Luo Zhan quickly looked over and looked at her with confusion. He said, Why are you only asking me? You can ask second brother. I said I don't know, and that means I don't know. When Lily saw him like this, she became even more suspicious. Something was wrong with Luo Zhan. Lily was suddenly even more certain that this guy must know where Oming was. In this way, Lily was no longer anxious. Since Luo Zhan knew, Oming must be fine. Lily hung up and stuffed the phone back into her pocket. She stretched and said, Oh, I haven't come out to relax in a long time. Qian, let's go to the hot spring. Su Qianxi was drinking the water that Li Xiqing had handed over. She was in a good mood. When she heard Lily say that, she directly stuffed the bottle into Li Xiqing's hand and said, Okay, Miss Yi, come along too. Mom, I want to go too. Li Jianyue ran over to Su Qianxi. She was so fast that it was as if she was afraid of being left behind. Su Qianxi smiled and squatted down to take her daughter into her arms. She whispered, Let's go. Don't let Dad go. Let's sneak away. When Li Jianyue heard that, she immediately shut her mouth. She turned her head and gave Li Xiqing a mysterious look. She put her chubby little finger to her lips and said, Secretly, but her dark, grape-like eyes darted around. She whispered into Su Qianxi's ear, Daddy already knows. What should we do? Su Qianxi asked in a low voice. When the adults heard this, they couldn't help but laugh. Li Mosen coughed softly behind her and said, Ursu, you spoke too loudly. Li Jianyue immediately covered her mouth, pulled Su Qianxi and said, Mom, go, don't take them with you. Luo Zhan walked forward and gently pinched Li Jianyue's little face. He said, Little rascal, we men have to be with men. As he spoke, he turned his head and shouted, Come, where are the men? Li Jianyue's eyes widened. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen immediately raised their hands and said in unison, Here. Let's go. Luo Zhan held his head high and led the two lackeys inside. Chapter 1337. Going to a hot spring with a bunch of men? Su Qianxi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Pointing at Li Xiqing, she said, Ask your dad. Li Jianyue immediately looked at Li Xiqing and called out, Dad. Li Xiqing calmly turned his head and looked at his daughter. His tone was gentle, but there was no room for disagreement. No. Li Xiqing nodded. Li Jianyue was unhappy. She pouted and asked, why? If you see a man's naked body, you'll have to take responsibility. Puffed. Luo Zhan immediately spat. This guy's way of educating the child was really different. Not only Luo Zhan, but even Yu Lily felt that his words were a little strange. Li Jianyue looked at Li Xiqing with a pair of big eyes. She was a little confused and asked, what do you mean by taking responsibility? By marrying them home? Ah. Li Jianyue's mouth fell open. Then as long as you see the boy naked, you have to take responsibility? The adults around almost burst out laughing, but Li Xiqing looked serious. Facing his daughter's expression, he nodded without any sense of guilt. Li Jianyue was a little flustered. She rubbed her hands on her clothes a few times and said carefully, then, I've seen both brother and brother Mosen naked. Do I have to marry them? Ha 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 ha. Luo Zhan laughed out loud and sat on the side with one arm around Li Mosen and the other around Li Jianxian. The little guy has a good future ahead of him. He actually wants 2 husbands. Li Jianyue was baffled by Luo Zhan's smile. In the end, her gaze fell on Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing said calmly, they are your brothers, so you don't need to be responsible. However, for other things that have nothing to do with you, you need to be responsible. For example, if you saw your uncle Luo Zhan, you need to be responsible. Li Jianyue didn't really understand. Why does Uncle Luo want me to be responsible? Yu Lily cut in and said, because your uncle Luo Zhan can't get married. You have to be careful. Hey, don't teach children bad things. Luo Zhan was not happy. When Li Xiqing heard what Yu Lily said, he looked at Li Jianyue seriously and said, your Auntie Lily is right. Then if I don't take responsibility, what will happen? Li Xiqing said, that is acting like a hooligan. In ancient times, people like you would be drowned in a pig cage. Ah. Li Jianyue covered her mouth. Does it mean throwing a bamboo cage and a big rock into the sea? Yes. Li Jianyue was scared out of her wits. She hugged Su Qianxi's neck with her chubby hands. She pouted and said, Mom, let's go. Su Qianxi was holding her daughter. Seeing this, she was amused and distressed. She gave Li Xiqing a reproachful look and said, look at how scared the child is. Li Xiqing didn't think there was anything wrong with his words at all. He said, children need to know these things from a young age. You guys are the same. You can't just look at other girls, and you can't just get close to them. Do you understand? These words were naturally directed at Li Mosen and Li Jianxian. The 2 little fellows had different expressions. Li Mosen nodded in agreement. Li Jianxian asked, what if another girl approaches us on purpose? Hearing that, Li Xiqing raised his eyebrows slightly, looking a little surprised. You. Chapter 1338. Seeing his blushing face, Li Xiqing felt a bit funny and couldn't help curling his lips. She went forward and picked him up with one hand. She gently patted his little butt and said, we'll talk about it when you grow up. Li Jianxian struggled unwillingly and shouted, Dad, I'm not a child anymore. Li Xiqing ignored his words and walked inside with him on his shoulder. Li Mosen looked at Li Jianxian enviously, but he did not slow down his pace. Luo Zhan could clearly see Li Mosen's expression. He whistled and took a step forward. Mimicking Li Xiqing, he lifted the little guy up and said, let's go. Li Mosen was shocked at first, but then he jumped up excitedly and said, Uncle Luo Zhan surpassed them. Okay. Luo Zhan strode inside and shouted exaggeratedly, Yo-ho! Let's play. When she saw that the men had finished running, Li Jianyue hugged her mother's neck tightly and asked, Mom, is what Dad said true? Hearing that, Su Qianxi smiled and said, you should listen to Daddy. Neither Daddy nor Mommy will harm you. Oh, Li Jianyue replied, not really understanding. After the women went in, they took a shower, changed their clothes, and soaked in the hot spring together. He asked the attendant for a swimming ring, and asked the little fellow to use the hot spring as a swimming pool. Li Jianyue was 4 or 5 years old this year, and had been fed by Li Xiqing into a little fatty. Yu Lily held the little guy and couldn't bear to part with him. She waved at Ursu and said, "Ursu, come here." The little guy swam toward Yu Lily, smiling and rolling in a circle, water splashing everywhere. It was obvious that Yi Qianqian and Yi Yuyu liked the little girl very much. The few of them quickly became a group. After soaking for a while, the little guy knew that it was time to leave. He said, "Mommy, let's go play with Big Brother and the others." Su Qianxi held her daughter and chuckled. "Do you miss your brothers?" Li Jianyue pouted and said, "My brothers aren't playing with me. They must be bored. Sigh, they're always doing boring things. I can't stand them." Yi Yu chuckled and asked, "For example?" "They always like to dismantle the car and then reassemble it. You don't like it?" "I like to push the cart, but I don't like to put it on. It's boring." Su Qianxi smiled and picked her up from behind. The little girl suddenly came out of the water and squealed, flapping her hands and feet excitedly. "Aw, Mommy, one more time. It's so fun. One more time." Su Qianxi threw her into the water, and the little girl screamed again, her smile crisp and clean. "All right, stop playing," Yu Lily said. She went up and wrapped the towel around Li Jianyue. "You'll catch a cold. Come up." Li Jianyue was so excited that Yu Lily almost couldn't hold her. "Ursu, don't move. The floor is very slippery. Don't let Auntie fall." Su Qianxi's voice was a little harsh, and Li Jianyue immediately became obedient and stayed motionless in Yu Lily's arms. Seeing that the little guy was behaving, Su Qianxi was relieved and climbed up the stairs. Chapter 1339. Such a scene frightened them to death. Yi Yuyu immediately held Su Qianxi from behind, and Yi Qianqian squatted down to steady her. Yu Lily was also shocked and shouted, "Qianqian, are you okay?" Li Jianyue didn't see what Su Qianxi had done. When she saw the adult's reaction, she was inexplicably shocked. She shouted, "Mom!" Su Qianxi closed her eyes, feeling a little weak. After a while, he shook his head and said, "I'm fine. Maybe I'm a little dizzy from soaking in the water for too long. Let's go." "Are you sure you're okay? Come up and rest for a while." Yi Yu helped her up and frowned. "Sis, help me get a towel." Oh. Yi Qianqian was quick. After wrapping the towel around Su Qianxi's body, Yi Yu helped Su Qianxi onto the shore. Su Qianxi felt much better. She pushed Yi Yu's hand away and said, "Much better. Thank you. Don't tell me you're anemic? If you are anemic, you will feel dizzy from time to time." Yu Lily frowned and said, "I had this condition before when I was anemic. I'll go get you some sugar water." "No, Lily, you're exaggerating. I'll be fine after a short rest." She stood up and stretched. "Don't tell my husband later. I don't want him to worry." Yu Lily looked at her and held the baby without saying anything. "Okay, let's go out. Ursu, are you hungry?" Su Qianxi reached out to Ursu. "Let Mommy hug you. Auntie's arms must be sore." Li Ursu hugged the towel on her body and pouted. She did not extend her hand and said, "Mom is not feeling well. I don't want you to carry me. I can walk on my own. Auntie, please put me down." Yu Lily absolutely adored the little girl. She put her down and wrapped the towel around her as she asked, "Are you feeling sorry for Mommy?" Li Jianyue pouted and said, "It's not good if Mommy isn't feeling well." As she spoke, she turned her head and tugged at Su Qianxi's hand. "Mommy, let's go look for Daddy." He had to tell his father. Only their father would take good care of their mother. She and her brothers were too young to take care of their mother. Moreover, the aunties were all outsiders. Only family members would take good care of their own. Although Li Jianyue was young, she knew it very well. A pair of big black grape-like eyes rolled around, holding his mother's palm. The little fellow had already secretly prepared what to say to his father. Su Qianxi looked down at her daughter and knew what she was thinking. She warned, "I'm fine. I'm not uncomfortable. Don't tell Dad, do you hear me?" "Oh." The little guy pouted, looking a little dejected. Yu Lily went forward to take the little girl away and threw her a set of clothes. Li Jianyue clumsily began to put them on. Although her movements weren't very nimble, she didn't wear the wrong clothes. She even tidied herself up beautifully in front of the mirror. As soon as she went out, Li Jianyue saw her father's tall figure. She pouted and ran over with her short legs, feeling wronged. "Daddy." Li Si's eyes softened when he saw his daughter. He squatted down and took her from her. Dad, let me tell you. Li Jianyue was about to say something, but she immediately saw Su Qianxi's warning look and immediately closed her mouth. I can't tell Daddy. Li Jianyue's eyes suddenly lit up. She looked at Li Jianxian and said, Older brother, let me tell you, Mommy almost fell by the pool just now. Dash. Chapter 1340. Yu Lily laughed. And Yi Qianxian, and Yi Yu couldn't help laughing. Su Qianxi held her forehead, gritted her teeth helplessly and shouted, Li Ersu. Hearing this, Li Jianyue shrank her neck, hugged her father's neck, and said pitifully, I didn't tell Dad, I told my brother. Su Qianxi walked over unhappily. Li Jianyue was scared and almost cried. She hugged her father's neck and cried, Daddy save me, sob sob sob. Li Siqing frowned, looked at Su Qianxi and asked, What happened? Nothing. Maybe Qianxian hasn't had a good rest recently, or maybe she has low blood sugar. She almost fainted in the pool just now. Fortunately, Yu held her, otherwise she would have been dead. Yu Lily was not afraid at all. She looked at Su Qianxi and stuck out her tongue. Li Siqing put his daughter on Luo Zhan's side and walked toward Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi looked at Yu Lily and then took a step back. She looked at Li Siqing and explained, It's not as bad as they said. It's okay. Li Siqing didn't care. He reached out and touched her forehead asking, What's wrong? I'm not uncomfortable, Su Qianxi was a little embarrassed and blushed. No, everyone is out to play. Don't make them unhappy. What's wrong with you? Li Siqing reached out and opened her palm, looked at it, and then stared at her face. Your face is pale. Let's go to the hospital. Su Qianxi was embarrassed. She pulled her hand back and said, I don't have makeup, of course. Don't make a fuss. Let's go. Li Siqing didn't understand what Su Qianxi meant. Third brother Luo Zhan, help me look after the child. Why don't I drive you and sister-in-law there, second brother? Li Jiannan walked over, standing tall and straight, frowning slightly, overflowing with worry and concern. Yu saw it clearly, and suddenly felt sympathy for Li Jiannan. Why did it have to be me? But I have to say that Su Qianxi is indeed a very good woman. A brother-in-law. Why are you joining in the fun? Su Qianxi blushed even more. She buried her face in Li Siqing's arms and buried her face in his chest. Her heart was beating faster and faster. She said coquettishly, Stop making a fuss. I know the reason, but I'm not sure. His voice was so low that only Li Siqing and Su Qianxi could hear it. Seeing her face getting redder and redder, Li Siqing relaxed. Her reaction proved that it wasn't a big deal. With this thought in mind, Li Siqing felt relieved. Touching her cheek, he said, We're all family. Why are you so shy? How can you be so shy? She did not want to, but being watched by so many people, she was nervous. Moreover, she did not dare to come to a conclusion on that matter. She was also conflicted in her heart, whether she should say it or not. It's okay. Second brother, you just like to make a fuss. Sister-in-law is in good health. Let's go eat. Luo Zhan said, his voice not low. Let's go, Miss Yi and my sister-in-law. A group of people were called by Luo Zhan and walked together, and the three children were taken away by Li Jiannan. Chapter 1341. Could it be? Su Qianxi felt that Li Siqing might have already guessed it. After all, Li Siqing was such a smart person. However, Li Siqing's words almost made Su Qianxi fall. Could it be that you were too tired last night? Su Qianxi blushed even more. She reached out and hit him, saying, Go away. Li Siqing chuckled and hugged her tightly. He whispered in her ear. Could it be that the children are going to have a younger brother or sister? Su Qianxi paused and looked up at him, blinking her watery eyes. Li Siqing raised his eyebrows and curled his lips. He kissed Su Qianxi's lips, hugged her slender body tighter, and asked softly, Really? Is it like this? Su Qianxi didn't know what to say. She just felt a little like when she was pregnant, but she wasn't sure. Answer me, is it? Li Siqing's mood was getting higher and higher. He was excited and happy, and he didn't hide it. Su Qianxi saw him like that, and couldn't help but smile secretly. She pushed him away. I don't know. It's not up to me. The smile on Li Xiqing's face widened. He looked at the line in front of him and whispered, "Let's go to the hospital and have a checkup, okay?" "No. Let's go tomorrow. What's the rush?" Su Qianxi was a little embarrassed and a little repulsed. Lily's health is not good. Don't show it in front of her. Ming and the others had roughly told her about Lily's situation. If they knew that Su Qianxi was likely to have another child, with Lily's sensitivity, she would probably blame herself. Su Qianxi didn't dare to say it in front of Lily. In addition to not being sure, this was also part of the reason. Li Xiqing couldn't help but tighten his grip on her and chuckled. Su Qianxi couldn't help but chuckle and push him away. "Go away." But who knew that Li Xiqing not only didn't go away, but also laughed even more wildly. He picked her up and said, "My wife is great." His voice was not low. Su Qianxi was shocked and exclaimed. She subconsciously put her arms around his neck and looked in the direction of the team. Fortunately, the team had disappeared. Su Qianxi breathed a sigh of relief and said in a low voice, "Put me down. You scared me." Li Xiqing put her down and couldn't help but kiss her on the lips. "This time, I can watch the birth of the child. I can make milk powder for the child, change diapers. I can do everything a father can do." Holding her in his arms, he was a bit emotional. "Let's go by a pregnancy test tonight. Tomorrow, we will go to the hospital for a checkup. Whether it's real or just a mistake, let's have another baby, okay?" She could clearly feel his vocal cords vibrating. His heart was beating fast, strong and healthy. This was the real Li Xiqing, the Li Xiqing who was by her side. The lack of fatherly love for the children for more than 4 years was his biggest regret. Su Qianxi knew and completely understood. Silently hugging him tightly, Su Qianxi leaned into his arms and said only one word, "Okay." Chapter 1342. She stood on her tiptoes and smiled brightly. "You're welcome, Mr. Li." Lily's heart was still a little empty. She hadn't seen Ming for an entire afternoon. This guy wasn't like this in the past. I haven't seen him for so long. Did he go home? Everyone was sitting at the table in the private room. Seeing Lily's absent-minded look, Luo Zhan coughed and said, "Sister-in-law, what are you thinking about?" Lily looked at Luo Zhan and smiled. "Humph." But after that snort, there was no more sound. Luo Zhan was a little confused. When he saw the gloating looks around him, he immediately coughed and asked, "What's wrong? What did I do? Where did Ming go? Be honest." Lily took a sip of tea and looked at Luo Zhan. She raised her eyebrows slightly. "You must know where he is." Luo Zhan's eyes immediately drifted away. He turned his head away and said, "I don't know. Ming didn't tell me where he went. How would I know?" Lily slammed the teacup on the table and stood up. She picked up her phone and walked out. "Fine. Well, this great-aunt was obviously unhappy," Luo Zhan complained in his heart. But he quickly ran up and shouted, "Sister-in-law, wait a minute." Lily turned her head and glanced at him. "Oh, Ming will be back soon. Sit down." Luo Zhan walked up and gently pushed her to the table. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Li Xiqing and his wife coming back hand in hand. He felt relieved and said, "Second sister-in-law, come and eat. Daddy, sit here." She waved at Li Xiqing and patted the seat next to her. "Mommy, sit next to Daddy." In short, he wouldn't let Su Qianxi sit next to him. The little guy felt a little guilty and didn't dare to look at Su Qianxi, afraid that she would scold him. It wasn't just Su Qianxi who saw it. Everyone else saw it too. Lily smiled and walked to the side. She said, "I'd better give Ming a call. You can go back and sit down." "Sister-in-law, take a seat. Ming will be back in less than 10 minutes." Lily didn't believe it, but when she saw Luo Zhan's confident expression, she sat down. 10 minutes later, Lily still hadn't seen Ming. Looking at the time, Lily stood up. Suddenly, all the lights around her dimmed. The sudden darkness gave the children a fright. When Li Jianhua saw this, she called out, "Daddy, Dad is here," Li Xiqing said in a low voice. Li Xiqing held his daughter in one hand and his wife in the other. "Third brother." "Yeah." Li Jiannan stood beside the two boys and gently placed his large, warm hands on them. The sudden change also made Lily a little frightened. She looked around and asked, Luozhan, what happened? However, as soon as he finished speaking, an orange-yellow ray of light suddenly shot toward this place from a short distance away. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. His voice was magnetic, gentle and clean. The familiar voice made Lily subconsciously turn her head to look at the source of the voice. But before she could see more, Oming stopped her with his hand and said, "Go back and see. Lily, happy birthday." Su Qianxi was the first to speak. "Daesu, go and take out the gift that Mom prepared for Auntie." Yeah. Li Jianxian immediately got out of the chair and ran to the sofa next to him. Chapter 1344. I don't know. I'm not with them, Yi Qianxian said with a shrug. Yi Qianxian shrugged her shoulders. She stood with Yi Yuyu and said, "That's the way it should be. If everyone knew about it, what kind of surprise would it be? Come Ursu, let's sing a happy birthday song for you." Luozhan walked over and picked Li Jianyue up. He clapped Li Jianyue's little paws and said, "Happy birthday to you." Her sweet voice carried the childishness of a little girl. It was so sweet that it touched one's heart. With someone taking the lead, the room was soon filled with a chorus of applause. Oming hugged Lily gently and said, "Happy birthday, wife." Lily smiled and kissed him on the lips. "Thank you, hubby. Do you like it? It's okay." Oming didn't mind. He rubbed her waist and said, "I'll deal with you tonight." Lily pretended not to hear him. Soon, she made her birthday wish with everyone's approval. The aftertaste of the happy birthday song accompanied Lily all the way to her home and didn't disappear. After parting from the crowd, Oming and Lily didn't follow Li Xiqing back to Yuxiu. Instead, they went to Qiao Ziqing's house. Oming had just drunk some wine, so Lily naturally took the responsibility of driving. Oming looked at his wife beside him and didn't look away the entire way. At first, Lily pretended to be calm and pretended not to notice. After a few minutes, she couldn't pretend anymore. She turned her head and stared at him. Oming's smile widened. He reached out and turned her face to face. "Look straight ahead. Don't look away." Lily drove steadily. "Don't distract me. Why do you keep looking at me? Haven't you seen it before?" "Well, I've never seen such a beautiful wife." Oming rested his chin on his hand and looked at Lily. "What birthday wish did you just make? It won't come true if I say it out loud." "It's okay. Tell your husband. It will come true." "How can that be?" "Yes. Go away, you're talking nonsense." Although Lily said that, she couldn't hide the smile on her face. "Oming, are you really going to F-Town tomorrow?" "I don't think I'm ready." "You don't need to prepare anything. We'll go together when the time comes." "I've already notified the other side. When the time comes, she'll come out to pick us up." Well, Lily felt a little nervous. Thinking that she might find out who her mother was the next day, Lily's heartbeat inexplicably accelerated. Oming gently placed his palm on her hand, which was holding the steering wheel, and said, "It's okay. I'm here. Instead of worrying about the results tomorrow, why don't you tell me what your birthday wish is?" "Go away." Lily shook his hand off and deliberately put on a straight face. "I won't tell you." "Really?" Oming raised his eyebrows. "Then let's not talk about it. In exchange, you have to help me bathe later." "No." "Then tell me." "No." "Then help me bathe." "Why are you such a hooligan?" "I'm just a so-so. I can be even more of a rogue, you know." Lily was speechless. She turned her head away and ignored him, but her heart was filled with sweetness, as if it had been coated with honey. Chapter 1345. Looking at the man she had loved and hated for a long time, she sighed in her heart. "We're here." The car stopped, and Lily gently pushed Oming. Oming leaned against the seat and said, "I'm dizzy. Come and help me." "You didn't drink much, did you? When did your alcohol tolerance become so bad?" Although Lily said that, she still went to the front passenger seat and opened the door. Oming reached out to her, his cheeks a little red. As soon as Lily touched his hand, she was pulled down by Oming. With a cry of surprise, Lily was caught off guard and fell into his arms. Before she could compose herself, Ming had already reached out his hand and pressed her head down. His lips touched her cheek. Lily was shocked and whispered, "What are you doing? We're at the door." Ming didn't say anything. He pressed her down and moved his lips slightly. Soon, he captured her lips and kissed her gently. His action was domineering and unyielding. Lily struggled a little, but she couldn't do anything. She simply stopped moving. Ming smiled, and his big hands wrapped around her waist. His tongue gently pried open her teeth and penetrated her mouth. Lily's hands were on his side, and she responded gently. Gradually, her whole body fell on top of him. Ming pulled her up and let her sit on him. He didn't stop moving, but slowly and gradually explored her. Lily knew Ming very well. When she noticed his action, she immediately knew what he wanted to do. Lily pushed him away and warned him, "No. Oh." Before Lily could finish her sentence, she was immediately swallowed up. The early summer night wasn't so quiet. The neighbor's dog kept barking, and the temperature in the car was rising. Lily couldn't help but let out a low moan. Her body was sensitive under his hands, and it trembled slightly. Reason made her push his hands away. Lily looked away and panted slightly. "Let's go back." "Not here." Ming acted as if he hadn't heard her at all. His thighs clamped her legs, and his lips gradually moved down to her neck, collarbone. The sound of panting grew louder and louder in the car. Lily couldn't take it anymore. At the same time, she was afraid of being seen, so she whispered, "Hurry up." Ming opened his eyes and whispered, "I'm almost there. I'm afraid you won't be able to take it." Lily's face became redder, and she felt a little hot. "Why don't we go back to the room?" Ming's movements became more and more intense, more and more turbulent. Lily didn't know what to do. She put her hands on his back and let him do whatever he wanted. Dong dong. The sudden knock on the car window made Lily tremble. He opened his eyes abruptly and saw the familiar face next to the window. "What are you doing?" Xiao Ziqing's voice wasn't soft, and Lily felt as if her cheeks had been lit on fire. Chapter 1346. Ming's movements became more and more intense. Lily's head was spinning. She placed her hands on his back and let him do whatever he wanted. Knock. Knock. The sudden knock on the car window made Lily's body tremble. She opened her eyes abruptly and saw the familiar face next to the car window. "What are you doing?" Xiao Ziqing's voice wasn't soft. Lily felt as if her face had been lit on fire and was burning hot. She stood up abruptly, but because her movements were too violent, her head hit the roof of the car with a loud thud. That sound scared Ming out of his wits. He immediately hugged her tightly and placed his hands on her head. "Are you okay?" Lily held her head and lowered her body. She curled up into a ball. When she heard Ming's words, she shook her head and pushed him. She complained, "It's all your fault." With that, she pushed open the half-closed car door and ran inside. Lily was stunned. Xiao Ziqing took one look at Lily's baggy clothes and the obvious look of embarrassment on her face. Seeing Lily's figure running inside, she secretly clicked her tongue. "It can't be. She seems to have bumped into something incredible. But to do it so openly in front of the house, isn't that too much?" Xiao Ziqing thought to herself. Soon, Ming came out of the car. Under the light from the door, she could see that Ming's cheeks were abnormally red. Ming frowned and walked over. Looking at Xiao Ziqing, he pursed his lips and said unhappily, "Mom, you ruined my plans." Xiao Ziqing was speechless. Ming didn't want to say more. He walked inside. His footsteps were quick, and he disappeared in an instant. Xiao Ziqing's face suddenly burned. Damn it! This young man really knows how to have fun. How could I ruin his plans? Bah! When Lily returned to her room, she immediately went to the bathroom. Looking at her flushed face in the mirror, she was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. This is too embarrassing. The first time I was in a car with Ming, I was hit by Ming's mother. How am I going to behave in the future? Would Ming's mother think that she was a slut at that moment? Lily covered her face and splashed water on her face. Then he checked his own body. His clothes were very messy. After taking off her clothes, Lily turned on the shower head and stood in the shower. After a while, Someone knocked on the bathroom door. Yulili ignored him, took a shower, put on a bathrobe, and walked out while drying her hair. However, as soon as he opened the door, he was pulled by an arm. Yulili was startled. She turned her head and was about to scream, but Oming covered her mouth with his. The smell of liquor mixed with the cigarette was not very pleasant. Yulili turned her head away in disgust and said, "Let go." He pressed his lips against her neck and whispered urgently, "Why didn't you wait for me?" She gently pushed him away and said, "Go take a shower. I washed it this afternoon," recommending the wonderful new book, 99 Days of Hidden Marriage. Chief, please be reserved on the surface. He was a cold-hearted young master who was loyal to his country. But in secret, he was an all-powerful and mysterious monarch. She calculated step by step and cheated him of all his first times, then left all his assets and ran away. Who knew that the next day, she would be brought to the church with a knife? He announced loudly, "Marry or die." "Marry, marry, marry. I'll marry, all right?" Chapter 1347. Yulili felt her body getting hotter and retorted, "Who asked you to slow down?" "Then what do you mean?" Oming pretended not to understand. His smile widened and he whispered, "Then I'll hurry up." After one round, it was indeed fast and slow. Yulili couldn't take it anymore. She stretched out her leg and kicked him. "Get lost." "Well, I'm coming." Yulili didn't even have time to catch her breath before she was pushed down again. Yulili slept so soundly that she didn't even have the energy to dream. After sleeping for a long time, Yulili suddenly remembered that she had something to do that day and opened her eyes. She turned her head and saw Oming lying next to her with one arm wrapped around her body. His breathing was even and steady as he slept. Yulili moved her body and felt a little sore. Her heart was suddenly filled with resentment. She pressed on top of him, as if she was venting her anger. She moved past him and reached for the phone on the bedside table. After getting the phone, Yulili didn't have any intention of going down. She just unlocked the phone on top of him. However, before she had time to look at the time on the phone, her waist was wrapped tightly by an arm. "What are you doing?" Oming's voice was a little hoarse from waking up, but it had an indescribable charm. Yulili glanced at the phone. It was 8:30 in the morning. Before she could finish her sentence, her body was wrapped around by Oming. Suddenly, she was on top of him, and he was on top of her. "I didn't expect you to be more passionate than me." Oming smiled and whispered against her. Yulili pushed him and shouted, "Pervert, please go crazy." Oming pushed his knee between her legs and forced her apart. He said, "You sent yourself to me, and you actually called me a pervert. You are so unreasonable." "I didn't." "Then, you were lying on top of me early in the morning. Didn't you want to?" "No. But I wanted to." Oming's voice was low, and his actions were unscrupulous. "Go away." Yulili lifted her leg and kicked him away. Her cheeks were red as she scolded. "Wasn't last night enough? Aren't you afraid of dying from arousal?" "I'm willing to die on top of you." Oh. By the time they finished washing up, it was already past 10 o'clock. It was Sunday, so Oh Huijin and Xiao Ziqing were at home. Seeing that their son and daughter-in-law had woken up so late, the old couple lowered their heads and pretended that they didn't see or know anything. When Auntie Zhang saw them, she shouted, "Young master, young madam, shall I heat up breakfast for you?" "There's no need for that." Oming held Yulili's hand and seemed to be in a good mood. "We'll go out to eat. We won't be coming back for a few days, so you don't have to cook for us." Zhang saw. "Okay." Yulili felt guilty when she saw Xiao Ziqing. She greeted her parents as a form of greeting before hurriedly running away. Like a thief caught, Yulili was so embarrassed. Finally out of the door, Yulili finally relaxed. Sitting in the passenger seat, Yulili thought of what had happened last night. She was so embarrassed that she reached out and hit Oming. But that wasn't enough to appease her anger. Yulili extended her leg and kicked him. "It's all your fault." Chapter 1348. When she heard Oming's roar, Yulili snorted and turned her head away from him. In a place where Yulili couldn't see, Oming's lips curled up even more arrogantly. He reached out and tugged at his wife. You just got up. What are you angry about? Don't touch me. Lily slapped his hand away. Drive. Don't be angry. I was wrong. I'll listen to you in the future. Ming said fawningly as he tugged at her sleeve. Lily turned her head and looked at him. Really? Yeah. When we're at home, I'll listen to you. But outside that might not be the case. Furthermore, at home, he had many ways to make her helpless. Ming's wishful thinking went on, and his smile became more and more sincere. Lily looked at him and didn't notice the trap in his words. Her anger finally dissipated a little, and she said, I'm hungry. What do you want to eat? Anything. I'm hungry and tired. Lily was still a little unhappy. She leaned back in the seat and glared at him. Ming also knew that she was exhausted. He looked at her with a guilty conscience, but he quickly started the car and said, I'm tired too. I worked from last night until this morning. I'm exhausted. Lily replied, You asked for it. Ming raised his eyebrows and said, It's because you seduced me. I didn't. Didn't you? You're so good looking, and I can't control myself when you appear in front of me. Isn't that seduction? Lily heard that and didn't reply. She turned her head away and looked out the window. There's no use in praising me. I'm not praising you. I'm praising my wife. How can my wife be so good looking? She has a good personality, a good temper, a good figure, and everything about her. I'm so lucky to be able to marry her. Ming said with a straight face as he steadily drove the car. But when he spoke, he would look over at her from time to time with a sweet and affectionate expression. Lily ignored him, but her lips unconsciously curved up. Looking out the window at the scenery passing by, she felt that it was exceptionally beautiful. Although Lily didn't speak, it was clear from the reflection in the window that she wasn't that unhappy anymore. Turning his head, Ming kept quiet. Soon, they arrived at the breakfast shop they often went to. After breakfast, he drove in the direction of F-Town. The distance between Kingstown and F-Town was neither close nor far. The night before, Lily couldn't take it anymore and fell asleep on the back of the chair. Lily didn't know how long the car had been driving. When she opened her eyes in a daze, the car was still moving. Lily was covered with a thin blanket. She stretched and sat down. With a yawn she asked, Not there yet? How long has it been? Almost there. Ming looked at the time and said, More than an hour. She will be here in about 10 minutes. She will come out to pick us up. Yeah. Lily answered and took a bottle of mineral water to drink. Do you want some water? Okay, feed me. Ming opened his mouth and waited for her water. Lily rolled her eyes at him, but she still stuffed the bottle she had drunk from into his mouth. Her actions were meticulous. Ming quickly drank half the bottle and said, Look ahead. In front of them, an elderly woman was waving at them. Beside her was a young man. Is that them? Chapter 1349. However, Lily didn't move. She just looked at him. Ming knew how she was feeling. He gently touched her cheek and whispered, Don't be afraid. Let's go. Ming quickly got out of the car and opened the door for her. She put her hand on Ming's and walked out. When Lily got out of the car, she got a good look at the woman. The woman looked to be in her 40s or 50s. Her skin was tanned, and there were a few wrinkles on her face. Her hair was black and curly. She was dressed in the style of an elderly person's clothing. She looked simple and honest. When the woman saw Lily, her eyes widened, and her gaze fell on Lily. She walked over to Lily. The woman was a little excited. She looked at her and asked, Is that you? Miss, is that you? The latter question was directed at Ming. It was obvious that she knew Ming. Ming nodded his head and said, Let's find a place to sit down and talk. Okay. Come, let's talk at my house. The woman's eyes were a little red. Guilt was written all over her face. Lily looked at the unfamiliar woman. She had expected to feel anything, but at that moment it was all gone. This woman was the birth mother, who had carried her in her womb for 10 months. But Lily's heart was only filled with unfamiliarity with this birth mother. Following them to the woman's house, Lily learned from Ming that the young man was her son. He was a year or two older than Lily. He He had already started a family with a wife and 2 lovely daughters. When talking about her family, the woman's expression softened. When she saw you, Lily, the expression on her face changed again to one of guilt. I didn't expect you to grow up so much in the blink of an eye, the woman said. It's been hard on you all these years. I'm sorry, child. I had no choice back then. I had a family to support. It wasn't easy for my man to support a family. As the woman spoke, her eyes became even redder. Consider it retribution. My youngest child didn't survive. You, Lily, looked at her. Her heart didn't waver. The atmosphere suddenly became silent. Oming held you, Lily's hand, and looked at the woman. He said, You've seen her. You said that you have a photo of her birth mother. Can we take a look? Perhaps it was because Oming was being too straightforward, but the woman was stunned for a moment. She shook her head in embarrassment and said, At that time, how could there be any photos? So many years have passed. Even if there were photos, they would have been long gone. But that woman was very beautiful. And the clothes she wore were also very beautiful. At that time, there was famine and cold everywhere. But the clothes she wore were very beautiful. Every time she came to our house, the villagers liked to come out and take a look. Do you still remember what she looked like? Oming asked. If I had a photo, would you be able to recognize her? You, Lily, was stunned. She looked at Oming and asked in surprise, You have a photo? Oming squeezed her hand and looked at the woman without saying a word. Yes, the woman was very sure and said, I will never forget her appearance for the rest of my life. She looks like someone from the city. She wears a coat and has long hair. However, she doesn't seem to be in good health. She always smells like medicine, and her face is a little pale. Do you have a photo? Chapter 1350. Secretly taken. What kind of photo was it? Did Oming need to take it secretly? Lily's eyes subconsciously looked at Oming's phone screen. The person in the photo was most likely her mother. The mother who had entrusted her to another woman. The mother who was willing to pay a huge sum for a surrogate. But when she was born, she was gone. Oming's finger swiped on the screen a few times. Then he found the photo. It was an old-fashioned color photo that looked a little old. Because it was taken secretly, it looked a little blurry, but the general outline was still visible. Lily was stunned when she saw the photo. She looked at Oming in disbelief. You suspect it's her? How is that possible? That was the old photo hidden in the depths of Wen Fenglin's wallet. It was Xianer. Oming squeezed her hand and gestured for her to calm down. He placed the phone screen in front of the woman and asked, Is it her? When the woman saw the photo, she seemed a little surprised. She quickly said, It looks like it. So is it her or not? Be sure. Yes. The woman was certain. It should be her. Should be. Oming frowned. He didn't think the woman was reliable. It's her. Mom, I remember this auntie too. When we were young, she often brought us candy. All of us brothers and sisters liked her very much. It must be Auntie Chi. The young man beside her said confidently. With her son's encouragement, the woman nodded her head in affirmation and said, Yes, it's her. I remember it too. It's her. She's your mother. Lily's heart raced. She looked at them and found it funny. You're not sure at all. You're talking nonsense. How could that be? Doing so won't do me any good, the woman said. Child, she's your mother. She's the one who came to me for a surrogate. Then tell me what's her name. Lily's tone wasn't very pleasant. It was obvious that she didn't believe her. Tell me her name, and I'll believe you. The woman's expression darkened, but she still thought about it carefully and said, She never told me her name. She didn't tell me at all. It was only written in the contract. I can't read, so I couldn't understand her name at all. What about the contract? Lily asked. It was broken by the child a long time ago and thrown away. Hearing that, Lily laughed. When the woman saw Lily's expression, she panicked and said, Although I don't know her name, I do know that her surname is Chi as in Zilai. Surname Chi. Lily pursed her lips, and her face was not very good. There really weren't many people with the surname Chi, however. It was also extremely difficult to find them. Didn't you say that you couldn't read? How did you know that I was late? Lily asked again. Being suspected like this, the woman was even more anxious. She pulled a long face and said, "It was she who told me." She herself introduced herself, saying, "My surname is Chi. Chi as in Zilai arrives late." Yulili looked at Oming and asked, "Do you know her surname?" Oming hadn't said a word since the beginning. A pair of deep peach blossom eyes shone with a different kind of light. Oming tilted his head and looked Yulili in the eye before slowly saying, "Her name is Chi Xian." Chapter 1351. Her name was Chi Xian. Yulili didn't know how she walked out of the small house. When she got into the car, her mind was still in a daze. The woman she had always heard about, Uncle Wen's first love, the daughter of a wealthy businessman with poor health, the beautiful woman who had passed away young, was her mother? The mother who had spent a fortune to hire a surrogate to give birth to her? If it was Xian Yulili would know the reason immediately. Why did she hire a surrogate? Why didn't she come to fetch her? Why did she let her be an orphan for so many years? Because Xian had died a long time ago. 24 or 25 years ago. She had already passed away from this world. For some reason, Yulili felt sad. This woman, who was supposed to be a stranger to Yulili, shouldn't have been able to affect her in the slightest. When the character was replaced by Chi Xian, Yulili felt an inexplicable sense of sorrow. "Let's go back." Oming reached out and hugged her. "Although your mother is gone, your father isn't he?" "Father?" Yulili felt that it was unfair. At the same time she felt sad. Her mother was gone, but her father was still around. But her father was Zhen Xianlang. How could she be that person's daughter? That kind of person's daughter. Yulili hugged Oming tightly and said, "Oming, please. Pretend this never happened. We've never been to F-Town. And we've never found a surrogate. We don't even know who my mother is." Oming hugged her tightly. After a long time he asked, "You don't like Zhen Xianlang?" Yulili pouted. She felt wronged. She felt wronged for Xian. She felt wronged for Wen Fenglin. She felt wronged for herself. He stole the woman that Uncle Wen liked. But not long after her death, he married another woman and gave birth to a son. He doesn't love Xian at all. To him, I don't mean anything at all. Since that's the case, why should I disturb their lives? Oming was silent for a moment. He planted a gentle kiss on her forehead and said, "Let's discuss this when we get back. I'm hungry." Yulili pouted and pushed him away. "Get out of the car. I'll drive. You sleep for a while." "Can you?" Oming was a little surprised. "I'm afraid that if you're in a bad mood, you'll drive me into a ditch. Wouldn't that be killing two people?" Yulili burst out laughing. She pinched his muscular arm and said, "Get lost. Get out of the car." "All right. Be careful. Your life is more important, dear." Oming quickly got out of the car. Yulili couldn't be bothered to get out of the car. She climbed over and said, "Sleep in the back. It's more spacious there." "Lily," Yulili said as she fastened her seatbelt. Yulili glanced at him and quickly started the car. She turned on the GPS and drove on the way back. Lily was. We Xian you was. Lily didn't you we. We oh Lily. Yulili rolled her eyes at him. "Didn't you say you were afraid that I would drive into the ditch? Why are you still sleeping so soundly?" Oming unbuckled his seatbelt, pulled her over and kissed her. He said seriously, "My wife's driving skills are beyond doubt. I believe in you." Oh. Yulili didn't want to talk to him. She walked into the restaurant. Coincidentally, as soon as he entered the restaurant, he saw a familiar figure. Chapter 1352. To be able to meet Wen Fenglin here was beyond their expectations. Yulili was stunned for a moment. Then she remembered what had just happened. She didn't know why, but she felt that Wen Fenglin wasn't worth it. The feeling of being wronged overflowed her again. "Uncle Wen," Yulili called out. There was a tinge of awkwardness in her voice. Wen Fenglin walked over to them and said, "What a coincidence. You're here for dinner too. We don't have many people. Do you want to join us?" "Huh." Yulili laughed when she heard that. "It's okay, Uncle Wen. You guys go ahead. They're all your friends. It's not appropriate for the two of us to eat together." When Fenglin had expected Yulili to reject him, He smiled and nodded his head. The deep dimples on his cheeks were mesmerizing. He said, "All right then. Enjoy your meal." "Wait a moment, Uncle Wen." Oming stopped Wen Fenglin and turned to look at Yu Lily. Then, he turned his head back and asked, "Do you have anything else for me after dinner?" Wen Fenglin stopped in his tracks. He looked at Oming and asked, "Is there anything else?" Yu Lily seemed to have guessed something. She nudged Oming and looked at him with a frown. Oming ignored Yu Lily's action and said, "There's a small matter. I think it's better that you know about it." Wen Fenglin looked at Oming, and then at Yu Lily. He nodded his head and said, "All right. If you guys finish eating, wait for me. There's a cafe nearby. Let's go there later." "Sure." Oming agreed and quickly parted ways with Wen Fenglin. Yu Lily watched Wen Fenglin's silhouette disappear into the distance. She nudged Oming and said, "You want to tell Uncle Wen? Are you crazy? Uncle Wen will definitely feel terrible." "I think there's a need to tell him." Oming pressed her hand down. "Let's go in first." They asked for a private room. Yu Lily and Oming ordered their food before continuing their conversation. After the discussion, Oming managed to convince Yu Lily. After dinner, the couple sat in the cafe for a while. Then, they saw Wen Fenglin walking toward them. Yu Lily saw Wen Fenglin's amiable smile. The two dimples on his cheeks were especially eye-catching. The moment she saw him, Yu Lily suddenly regretted her decision. He subconsciously squeezed Oming's hand and asked worriedly, "Do we really have to tell Uncle Wen?" More than 20 years ago, Xianer had married Jin Xianling, and Wen Fenglin had received nothing. More than 20 years later, to discover that the Xianer from 20 years ago had paid the price of her life to give birth to a daughter for Jin Xianling was simply too cruel. It would be better to let this secret be scattered in the wind. Oming could read her mind. He gently patted her hand and gently said, "Don't be afraid. Men are not as weak as you think." Was that so? Yu Lily had some doubts, but at the same time, she was a little confused. Today was a working day, so there weren't many people in the cafe. The corner they were in was very quiet. Apart from them, there were no other customers around. When Fenglin walked over and sat down, "Sorry to keep you waiting. You haven't ordered anything to drink. What would you like to drink?" Chapter 1353. To Wen Fenglin. The name Qi Xian sounded familiar yet distant. Wen Fenglin was taken aback. He put his bag down and asked, "What's the matter? Why did you suddenly mention her?" "Before I tell you about this, I'd like to ask you a few questions." Oming held Yu Lily's hand and placed his other hand on the table. He looked at Wen Fenglin calmly. "Okay, ask away." Wen Fenglin didn't mind. At that moment, the waitress served the drinks that they had ordered. Wen Fenglin looked at the waitress and thanked her before looking back at Oming. Beneath his round black-rimmed glasses, his small eyes were filled with doubt. He picked up his glass and took a sip. His slightly plump face was filled with a clean and kind smile. He exuded a clean and comfortable aura, and a strong scholarly aura. "Uncle Wen, did you know that Qi Xian had a child with Jin Xianlang?" Wen Fenglin paused. The smile on his face faded a little. He looked at Oming and slowly swallowed the water in his mouth. "Jin Xianling had a child with Xianer?" Wen Fenglin repeated the question and shook his head with a chuckle. How could that be possible? Wen Fenglin's reaction made Yu Lily feel even more guilty. Xianer's body was unable to conceive. Wen Fenglin put his glass down. The smile on his face had completely disappeared. She couldn't bear a child. She couldn't even guarantee her own health. She wouldn't do something so irresponsible. So they couldn't have had a child. As he spoke, his voice became more and more determined. Yes, they all knew that Qi Xian's body wasn't in good health. She couldn't bear a child, but she could have hired a surrogate. The child born from the surrogate would still be her child. Although the child wouldn't have crawled out of her belly, Qi Xian's blood still flowed through Yu Lily's body. That couldn't be changed. After Wen Fenglin said that, he seemed to have thought of something. He picked up his glass again and took a sip. He didn't put it down for a long time. What was he trying to hide by doing that? The more Yu Lily thought about it, the more upset she felt. She tugged at Oming, but Oming was one step ahead of her and said, "What if she hired a surrogate?" Wen Fenglin's heart which had remained calm a moment ago, suddenly twitched violently. The liquid in his mouth flowed down his throat. Caught off guard, Wen Fenglin coughed violently. Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. She quickly took the cup from his hand and placed it on the table. She reached out to pat his back and said, "Uncle Wen." Wen Fenglin waved Yu Lily's hand away and replied, "It's nothing. Did you say that Xian'er hired a surrogate?" Wen Fenglin seemed to have thought of something as he looked at Yu Lily. There was something special about Yu Lily. She had a special quality that was very similar to Xian'er. It was her personality and her aura. In terms of facial features, she was not that similar to Xian'er. At first glance, no one would associate her with Qi Xian, but after interacting with her for a while, he realized that she was very similar to Xian'er. Could it be? Wen Fenglin was a smart man. With one look, Yu Lily knew that he had guessed correctly. Chapter 1354. That was a good thing. That was the first thought that flashed across Wen Fenglin's mind. However, when he heard that it was a good thing, Wen Fenglin couldn't bring himself to be happy. Yu Lily was possibly Xian'er and Jin Xianlong's daughter? Was that a good thing? It wasn't, at least it wasn't to him. Wen Fenglin's chest tightened. Waves of heart-wrenching pain shot through him. It felt like he was being stabbed by a knife. Zhen Xianlang had not only obtained the woman he loved, but he had also allowed that woman to conceive his child. Yet, this man had allowed that child to wander outside while he formed a family of his own. He had a son and a daughter, and everything was blissful. Why? It wasn't just his chest that hurt. His head was spinning. Wen Fenglin couldn't accept such a huge amount of information. He rested his head on the table with one hand. After a few seconds, Wen Fenglin chuckled and asked, "Are you kidding me? How did you know?" Yu Lily knew that the news was cruel to Wen Fenglin. She couldn't bear to hear it. She thought for a moment and said, "Oming has been helping me look for my biological parents for a long time now, and we've finally made some progress. Today we're going to F-Town." Yu Lily briefly explained the whole story. She didn't speak quickly. In fact, her tone was filled with hesitation. But she still told the whole story. As she spoke, she paid close attention to Wen Fenglin's expression. Wen Fenglin closed his eyes and leaned against the table. There was no obvious expression on his face. There was a complicated feeling in his heart. Yu Lily knew that it wasn't an easy thing to accept. After she was done, she didn't say anything else. "You wanted to see Zhen Xianlang, and you wanted me to clear the way for you, right?" Wen Fenglin removed his glasses and massaged his temples. The corners of his lips turned up. It was obvious that he was in a bad mood. The dimples on his cheeks weren't deep. "No." Yu Lily waved her hand. "Oh Ming and I felt that we should tell you about this." Wen Fenglin chuckled. "Actually, you don't have to tell me." Wen Fenglin put his glasses back on and looked up. He was back to his usual self. "So many years have passed. There's nothing I can't let go of. Xian'er has been gone for so many years. No matter what, she's already my wife in my heart." As he spoke, he stood up. "No matter what, thank you for telling me this news. Congratulations, Lily. You finally found your biological parents." As he spoke, his smile deepened. However, this smile hid an indescribable bitterness. Yu Lily only understood a little, and her heart ached a little. Wen Fenglin was a good man, but the heavens didn't care for him at all. When he saw Yu Lily's gaze, Wen Fenglin replied casually, "Although Xian'er and I aren't married, and no one has acknowledged our relationship, we've been in love for a while. Speaking of which, I even pledged to marry your mother in private." But as he spoke, his smile faded even further. He looked at her and said, "If you don't mind, you can call me Daddy." Yu Lily looked up at the gentle man and opened her mouth. Her voice wasn't loud as she said, "Daddy." When Fenglin's eyes reddened, he looked at the daughter in front of him and smiled from the bottom of his heart. Chapter 1355. When Fenglin walked out of the cafe, but the bitterness in his eyes didn't fade. When Fenglin's eyes reddened uncontrollably, his footsteps quickened. When Yu Lily and Oming reached home, she couldn't relax. The image of Wen Fenglin's back appeared in her mind, and she felt an indescribable pain. "Let's go to Fujian tomorrow," Oming said. Yu Lily was stunned. Why are we going to Fujian? To look for your father. Oming held her hand and led her inside. Come on, let's sleep together. Yu Lily followed him into the room and said reluctantly, no. Let's just leave it like this. I don't need a father. That Jun guy has a happy family now. Why should I interfere? If she did that, the current balance would be ruined. Yu Lily didn't want to do that. She didn't want to call such a man her father. Oming pulled her over and said, yeah, let's not think about this anymore. Let's sleep for a while. I'll make a trip to the office. I'll be back for dinner with you. Yu Lily nodded her head. All right. Be careful. Good afternoon. Oming walked out of the house, picked up his phone, and called Wen Fenglin. Su Qianxi sat on the toilet seat in the bathroom, looking at the pregnancy test in her hand in a daze. All three of them, without exception, had 2 lines. Was she pregnant? Knock knock. There was a knock on the bathroom door. Li Xiqing's voice came through the door. Wifey, are you done? Su Qianxi gripped the pregnancy test in her hand and scratched her hair. She stood up and opened the door. Li Xiqing looked at the grave expression on Su Qianxi's face and had a bad feeling about it. How is it? Li Xiqing asked as he gently touched her face. Su Qianxi pouted and hugged him tightly without saying a word. Li Xiqing's heart, which had been in his throat, suddenly relaxed. Su Qianxi could vaguely sense his disappointment. Li Xiqing hugged her with one arm and stroked her hair with his warm palm. He said in a low voice, it's okay. The child will come when it's meant to. When Su Qianxi heard this, she chuckled and hugged him tightly. You're the one who wants children. Why are you comforting me? I should be the one comforting you. Li Xiqing was even more disappointed. Then why don't you comfort me? She let him go and smiled brightly. Don't be disappointed, Mr. Li. I'm pregnant. He paused, looked up at the woman in front of him, and asked incredulously, what did you say? I said, I'm pregnant. I'm going to be a mother again. You're going to be a father again. Su Qianxi put her hands in his ear and shouted. Her smile widened, and her tone was light. Li Xiqing's heart raced. He suddenly laughed and looked at Su Qianxi. Really? Yes. She showed him the pregnancy test. Look. Li Xiqing didn't even look at the pregnancy test kit. He laughed and kissed Su Qianxi's face hard. Really, really pregnant. Su Qianxi looked at him, feeling warm. Compared to 5 years ago, Li Xiqing was even more agitated and straightforward. Li Xiqing smiled, but his eyes turned red. He looked at his wife and whispered, Thank you, Mrs. Li. Chapter 1356. Although Li Xiqing now had 3 children calling him dad, he didn't have much of a sense of being a father. This role seemed to be somewhat distant from him. But if he could have another child, he could start from scratch. Maybe it would feel different. Su Qianxi looked at him, stood on her tiptoes and kissed his lips. I love you, Mr. Li. Li Xiqing hugged her and pressed his forehead against hers, smiling without saying a word. I love you too, Mrs. Li. The next few days passed by uneventfully. Yu Lily drew at home and took care of the housework and 3 meals a day. She didn't seem to be any different from other housewives. At Eurasian Comics, Yu Lily was temporarily on paid leave in the name of marriage. But almost everyone in the company already knew that Yu Lily was actually married to the big boss of Eurasian Comics. So it didn't matter whether she went to work or not. Yu Lily had the habit of running in the morning. Although she lived in the same area as Su Qianxi, it was difficult to meet Su Qianxi in the morning. Instead, she met Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing brought a few children out for a run, and the 3 children chased each other. Li Jianyue's body was round, and she almost became a little fat. She was panting when she ran, and her little face was red. When she saw Yu Lily, Li Jianyue was surprised and shouted, Auntie Lily. The little girl ran toward Yu Lily and shouted, Auntie Lily, here, here. Yu Lily stopped and looked at Li Jianyue. Good morning. Li Xiqing was with the 2 boys. When he saw Li Jianyue running toward Yu Lily, he didn't care anymore. He nodded at Yu Lily as a greeting, and then slowly ran with the children. Yu Lily looked at the father and son running, and the happy scene looked very harmonious. How happy! Li Jianyue succeeded in slacking off and happily said to Yu Lily, Good morning, Auntie. The little fellow had already put on a short-sleeved shirt. His fleshy arms were segmented and looked very cute. Lily touched her hand and asked, "Where's Mommy?" "Mommy is sleeping at home. Daddy said that Mommy has a baby in her stomach, and she needs to sleep more to be good for the baby," Li Jianyue said with a smile. Lily heard that, and was slightly surprised. "Your mother is pregnant again?" Yes. Li Jianyue was a little excited and secretly said, "Mommy has a baby now, so she won't have time to teach us how to read and write. Daddy said he's going to send me to school. Hee. I'm going to be in grade 1. In the little guy's world, it was always so simple to be happy or not. Lily chuckled and stood up. "Come, I'll take you to your father." Auntie, can we walk there? You have to run to grow up healthily. Only then can you take care of your younger brothers and sisters. You'll be a big sister soon, Lily said with a smile, but her heart was a little complicated. She was pregnant again. How nice. Lily had a smile on her lips, but there was a sense of loneliness in her eyes. The little boy didn't notice the change in Lily's mood. When he heard her words, he nodded and said, "Yes, I have to take care of my brother and sister. Let's go." Without waiting for Lily to catch up, Li Jianyue ran off first. Chapter 1357. Oming had been back to work for the past 2 days. He had been busy until late every day. When Lily ran back, Oming was still asleep. Lily took her time preparing breakfast. When she was done, she bit into a piece of bread and walked into the room. When she opened the door, she heard the sound of washing up coming from the bathroom. The bathroom door wasn't closed. Lily walked in and leaned against the door. As she bit into the bread, she said, "Qianqian seems to be pregnant again." Oming paused in the middle of washing his face and turned to look at her. "Pregnant again?" He quickly finished washing his face and said, "Second brother is really efficient. How long has it been since he came back? He's just gotten familiar with the children, and now he's having a baby. TSK. Lily stared at him but quickly stuffed the bread into her mouth and said, "I've made breakfast. Come out and eat." Oming put the towel away and turned to walk out. Lily was already downstairs. After changing his clothes, Oming walked down at a moderate pace. Lily was looking at her phone at the table. When she heard the footsteps behind her, she said, "Uncle Wen sent me a WeChat message." Oming walked over to the table and sat down. He picked up the glass of milk and took a sip. "What did he say?" "He said that the person from the Zhen family is coming to see me." Lily drank the milk without looking up. "I don't want to go. It's boring. Did Uncle Wen tell Zhen Xianlang?" Oming looked at Lily. "Why don't you go? After all, he's your father." "I don't want a father like that. He has his own family. I don't need to ruin their lives." "Oming, I really don't want to." She used to look forward to her parents. When she found out that her parents were Qi Xian and Zhen Xianlang, she didn't want them anymore. Anyway, she was already an adult. What did she need her parents for? "What are you going to tell Uncle Wen? He came all the way from Fujian. If you don't meet him, what do you expect Uncle Wen to do?" Oming ate his bread and looked at her with a deep gaze. "I feel that no matter what, we should meet him first. Furthermore, I feel that things aren't that simple." Lily was stunned and looked at him in confusion. What does he mean by things aren't that simple? Oming didn't explain. In the end, Lily agreed to meet Zhen Xianlang. When Zhen Xianlang arrived in Kingstown, Lily was painting at home while he went to the office. Lily was so engrossed in her painting that she didn't notice the passage of time. When the phone rang, it was already noon. It was a call from Oming. "Honey, Uncle Wen and Uncle Zhen have arrived in Kingstown. Where are you?" "I'll pick you up. He's at home. You can go directly to the airport to pick him up. I'll go by myself. I'll let you know when I find a place to eat." "All right." After reaching an agreement, Lily quickly booked a private room in a restaurant and began to dress herself up. She changed her clothes and put on some light makeup before driving to the restaurant. When they arrived, they found that they had already arrived. When Lily walked in, the first person she saw was her husband, followed by Uncle Wen, and finally Zhen Xianlang. Compared to a while ago, Zhen Xianlang appeared rounder and taller. His cheekbones were slightly higher, and his eyes beneath his glasses were full of vigor. Chapter 1358. Zhen Xianlang was the man who had married Qi Xian. Not long after Qi Xian's death, he had married another woman. He was also Yu Lily's father. Yu Lily knew that, but she still harbored some resentment toward this man. He didn't love Qi Xian, but he had married her, and left Wen Fenglin alone for the rest of his life. Yu Lily felt a little resentful. Yu Lily sat down and looked at him with a smile. "Yeah, we meet again." The waiter poured some tea for Yu Lily and quickly left the scene. No one spoke. The atmosphere was dead silent. Yu Lily took a sip of tea and lowered her head, deep in thought. "Lily, why don't you order something? We're all grown men, and we don't know what to eat." Wen Fenglin placed the menu on the wheel and turned it over to Yu Lily. Yu Lily took the menu and placed it between her and Oming. They looked at it together. "Is there anything you don't eat?" Yu Lily looked up at Wen Fenglin and then at Zhen Xianlang. "Do you eat seafood? How about sashimi?" Zhen Xianlang looked at her and replied, "I'm allergic to seafood. I can't eat too much." Yu Lily looked regretful and said, "What a pity. Seafood is delicious. Uncle Wen, do you want some?" "Yeah, I'm fine with anything. I'm not a picky eater." Wen Fenglin sipped his tea and smiled. The two dimples on his lips made him look intoxicating. "That's fine. You can order seafood. Lao Wen loves seafood. Every time I go out with him he eats a lot. I can still eat a little." Zhen Xianling laughed. "But my son is allergic to seafood too. Are you okay with that?" "Sure." Yu Lily looked at the seafood on the menu. Sashimi was fine with anything. "Hubby, help me call the waiter." The waiter came over quickly. Yu Lily placed her order and asked for a bottle of corn juice. Throughout the meal, Zhen Xianlang and Wen Fenglin interacted from time to time. Oming also spoke to them, but Yu Lily didn't know what to say. It was inevitable for men to smoke and drink at a meal. Zhen Xianlang took out a pack of cigarettes and handed one to Wen Fenglin and one to Oming. Wen Fenglin took it and lit it, but he didn't smoke much. Oming politely declined. "Thank you, Uncle Zhen, but we're preparing for pregnancy. I won't smoke." Zhen Xianlang nodded his head. It was hard to read his expression. He looked at Oming and asked Xianlang, "Yeah, we've already gotten our marriage certificate. The wedding will be held next month, and we're still preparing for it." Oming had a smile on his face. As he spoke, he looked at Yu Lily with a gentle gaze. That's really fast. I actually didn't hear anything about it. Old Wen, did you already know about it?" Zhen Xianlang said with some rebuke. Wen Fenglin looked a little vexed. He smacked his head and said, "Look at me. I forgot to tell you. But it's not too late to know now. At the wedding next month, you can still act as a father and hand Lily's hand over to Oming's." Of Li. One of one fawfully. One of one of. Chapter 1359. It was more than that. When Wen Fenglin told him about it, Zhen Xianlang was rendered speechless. Qi Xian had a child? A surrogate child. When Zhen Xianlang said that, he laughed and said, "Back when we were together, she didn't give the game away at all. I was too irresponsible as a husband." When Yu Lily heard that, and saw the guilt in his eyes, she lowered her head. Actually, it wasn't Zhen Xianlang's fault. Everyone knew that Xianer's health wasn't good. Who would have thought that the gentle and weak sister Lin would hire a surrogate to give birth to a child? At that time, the technology for surrogacy wasn't very developed. She probably just wanted to give it a try and conceive the child. The more Yu Lily thought about it, the more bitter she felt. Qi Xian's health wasn't good. If she couldn't have a child, what about me? Did I have to hire a surrogate as well? Could it be that mother and daughter were destined to walk the same path? Yu Lily's heart ached at the thought. She turned her head and grabbed Oming's hand. Oming turned his head and looked at her with confusion. His peach blossom eyes softened as he asked, "What's the matter?" Yu Lily shook her head gently and didn't say another word. The meal was quickly over. Yu Lily had been worried that if he brought her home, his family would change, and she would feel awkward. After the meal, Yu Lily realized that she had been overthinking things. She had thought that there would be progress after the meal, but there didn't seem to be. It was obvious that Zhen Xianlang didn't have much hope for his daughter. He didn't have any intention of asking Yu Lily to call him daddy. and he didn't have any intention of bringing her home. It was as if he was there to meet someone he had no relationship with. Yu Lily felt a little relieved, but at the same time, a little disappointed. Her father hadn't welcomed her as she had imagined. After Ming and Yu Lily left, when Fenglin brought Jin Xianlang, who hadn't been to Kingstown in a long time, to meet up with his old friends. When Fenglin wasn't in a good mood, just as when Fenglin was about to head over to an old friend's house, Jin Xianlang said, "Lao Wen, let's talk." When Fenglin tilted his head to look at him, "What do you want to talk about?" "Regarding that child, I think we need to talk about it." Jin Xianlang took a long drag on his cigarette and said meaningfully, "Why are you so sure that girl is my child?" When Fenglin was a little angry when he heard that. His brows furrowed. His usual gentleness was nowhere to be seen. "What do you mean?" "I said I need to do a DNA test with that child." When Fenglin heard that, he was even more annoyed. He turned around to face him. "Are you suspecting that Lily isn't your child at all?" No wonder he didn't have the slightest bit of enthusiasm at the dining table. So this was what he was thinking in his heart. Jin Xianlang looked at Wen Fenglin's darkened expression and said, "You can't blame me for being suspicious. After all." Before he could finish his sentence, Wen Fenglin punched him. A firm and hard fist smashed into Jin Xianlang's face. Caught off guard, Jin Xianlang almost fell to the ground. Chapter 1360. When Fenglin felt all the pent-up anger in his heart for so many years explode in an instant. The volcano in the depths of his heart erupted uncontrollably. When Fenglin didn't feel any relief from the punch. Instead, he became even more enraged. He took a step forward and growled, "Are you suspecting that Xian'er was unfaithful to you?" Your AB asterisk starred. Jin Xianlang covered his pained face and took a deep breath. When he heard that, he laughed coldly and said, "Unfaithful? Wen Fenglin, do you dare say that nothing happened during the 2 weeks that you stayed with Xian?" Wen Fenglin was stunned when he heard that. He looked at Jin Xianlang. Jin Xianlang straightened up and looked at Wen Fenglin. His face was filled with anger. "What? You have nothing to say now? What do you mean by that?" Wen Fenglin's heart raced. "You're suspecting? No, that's impossible. She's already married to you, and she's gone now. How can you still suspect her? Are you even human?" Jin Xianlang looked at Wen Fenglin coldly. "You're guilty. You and her weren't clean back then, were you?" The blunt words fell into Wen Fenglin's ears like an arrow that had been shot from the dark. Wen Fenglin gritted his teeth in anger. He grabbed Jin Xianlang by the collar and shouted, "Watch your words. What do you mean by not clean? The two of us were a couple back then. You stole my love away from me. How dare you say such things now? Don't you have any shame?" If that's the case, there was really something going on between the two of you. Wen Fenglin was even more enraged. He raised his fist and prepared to land a punch on Jin Xianlang's face. However, Jin Xianlang clenched his fist tightly. "After we got married, she kept using her health as an excuse to reject me. But when she was asleep, she called out your name." Jin Xianlang pushed him away. "We've been friends for many years. I don't want to fall out with you. That girl is probably Xian'er's daughter, but whose flesh and blood is she? I don't think she's mine." "Jin Xianlang, you're insulting her. Xian'er isn't a fickle girl." "I know." Jin Xianlang's voice was a little bitter. "Her heart has always been with you, so even if she married me, she wouldn't consummate the marriage with me." When these words landed on Wen Fenglin, it was like a torrent falling into the green waters of a lake. In an instant, the water splashed and exploded. "You didn't consummate your marriage?" Wen Fenglin's heart raced. He looked at Jin Xianlang in disbelief. "How is that possible? Could it be that Yu Lily is actually his daughter?" With that thought in mind, Wen Fenglin felt as if his heart was about to leap out of his throat. His daughter, her daughter, their daughter? Jin Xianlang looked at him and said, "We all know Xian'er. You know very well whether it's possible or not. However, because Xian'er is a surrogate, I'm not sure whose child it is. Of course he would like Xian'er's child." However, Jin Xianlang felt that this child wasn't his flesh and blood. Even though Qi Xian was his wife, even though Qi Xian had died in his bed, her feelings for him had always been that of an elder brother. There had never been any romantic feelings between a man and a woman. Sienna's health wasn't good, but she was able to secretly hire a surrogate and run all over the place. If it were his child, Sienna wouldn't have needed to do that. Zhen Xianling understood that, but he refused to give up. What if? What if? Sienna felt that she couldn't cut off the Zhen family line, so she secretly took his sperm to get pregnant. Chapter 1361. Zhen Xianlong's words left Wen Fenglin deep in thought. Back then, when they were young, a man and a woman living together, it was inevitable that they would have that kind of impulse. Those 2 weeks were Wen Fenglin's happiest times. It was just that in that half a month, they had only done it once. Was it possible to get pregnant just once? If she really got pregnant that time, then after Sienna found out that she was pregnant, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to keep the child. So she found a surrogate, right? Wen Fenglin thought it was highly possible, and his excitement grew. Was that so? When Zhen Xianlang saw the expression on Wen Fenglin's face, he felt even more upset. Wen Fenglin took out his phone and dialed Yu Lily's number. Yu Lily and Oming had just driven off when they received a call from Wen Fenglin. When she saw the name Uncle Wen, Yu Lily hesitated for a moment before answering the call. Uncle Wen. Lily, where are you now? Wen Fenglin sounded agitated. I have something to tell you. Oming and I just drove out. Where are you now? Let's go over now. Wen Fenglin was still in the private room and hadn't left. When they reached the entrance of the restaurant, Wen Fenglin and Zhen Xianling quickly left. After getting into Oming's car, Wen Fenglin said, "Let's go to the hospital." What's wrong? Yu Lily looked at them strangely. There was a faint blush on Wen Fenglin's face as he said, Lily, it's very possible that you're not old Zhen's daughter. She might not be Zhen Xianlong's daughter? Wen Fenglin's words sounded ridiculous to Yu Lily. If she wasn't Zhen Xianlong's daughter, whose daughter was she? Qi Xian married Zhen Xianlang. Wasn't Qi Xian's child Zhen Xianlong's child? Yu Lily found it hard to believe. But then she immediately thought of another important point. Could she possibly not be Qi Xian's daughter? After all, Qi Xian was already dead, and the dead could not testify. Who knew if that woman was telling the truth or not? Yu Lily was a little worried, but she still listened to them, and got Oming to drive to the hospital. Yu Lily drew her blood, and came out quickly. Zhen Xianlang wasn't the only one who had his blood drawn. Wen Fenglin had his blood drawn as well. Yu Lily looked at Wen Fenglin with suspicion. Wen Fenglin seemed to be in a very good mood that day. No, he was in a very good mood that afternoon. Wen Fenglin seemed to be in high spirits. Yu Lily seemed to have guessed something. Yu Lily didn't mention the possibility. When they got home, she asked Oming. Oming, based on Uncle Wen's attitude, don't tell me they think that Qi Xian's child is Uncle Wen's child? Fte Fenglin thought of. Ian he thought. Xian thought. Ming he. Fun. Chapter 1362. Oming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Uncle Wen is stout, not fat. Middle-aged people are already like that. Uncle Wen takes good care of himself. Yu Lily shook her head. In any case, we don't look alike. Besides, I don't look like Qi Xian at all. They always say that we look alike after interacting with each other. They talk about temperament and temperament. Temperament is nurtured. I'm guessing that when Qi Xian was young, she probably grew up in a similar environment as me. That's why she thinks we look alike. The more Yu Lily thought about it, the more likely it seemed. I think that's probably the case. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental? There are so many orphans in the world, and there are so many who can't find their biological parents. I've been so unlucky since I was young. How could I have been so lucky to find them just at the right time? Oming laughed. He stroked her hair with his large, warm hands and said, What do you mean by just at the right time? I looked for a long time, all right? Is that so? Yu Lily still felt that it was a little unrealistic. Then how do you know that what that person said was true? Qi Xian has been dead for so many years. How could they confirm that the surrogate was Qi Xian? Just by looking at your photo. I still don't think it's very reliable. Oming felt a little helpless. He pulled her down and said, Do I need you to think it's reliable? In any case, the blood test results will be out tomorrow. At that time, If you're not Jin Xianlong's daughter or Uncle Wen's daughter, then we can be sure that you're not Qi Xian's daughter. Hey, what if it's both? Yu Lily looked up at him and laughed. If it's both, then what will happen? Oming said seriously. Then I'll probably be taken away by the people at the Institute of Scientific Research to be dissected. You're the one who'll be dissected. Well, Oming's eyes flashed with a smile. He opened his arms and said, You can dissect it. I won't resist. Get lost. Get lost in broad daylight? I don't mind. Yu Lily said. Go back to your company. Are you done with your work? Your head is full of unhealthy thoughts. Oming turned around and hugged her. The corners of his lips lifted slightly, and he chuckled wickedly. His peach blossom eyes were full of mirth as he said, What do you mean by unhealthy thoughts? This is the highest happiness in life, doing happy things with the person you love deeply. Yu Lily was stunned by his fallacious reasoning. She turned her head away and ignored him. Oming lowered his head to kiss her on the cheek, but she avoided it. Then he kissed her neck, but Yu Lily shrank back. The smile in Oming's eyes deepened. He stuck out the tip of his tongue and gently slid it across her skin. Yu Lily's body trembled slightly. She immediately pushed him away and said, No, I'm exhausted. Come back at night. Oming was just teasing her. When he heard what she said, his eyes curved and he said, Kiss me. Yu Lily turned her head and quickly kissed him on the lips. But before she could leave, her head was locked by his palm. Her lips were sealed, and he penetrated her. Oming's movements were light and wild. He could feel Yu Lily's body moving with his movements. He felt like he was floating, and the comfort in his heart was rising. After the long kiss, Yu Lily panted slightly and held him in her arms. Oming was about to tease her, but he inadvertently saw that her eyes were slightly red. His heart tightened. Oming sat up with her in his arms. What's wrong? Chapter 1363. How could that be? It can't be. Oming looked at her, his dark eyes deep and serious. Don't think too much. There will always be a time when it's time. It was said that children were a gift from the heavens, and Yu Lily believed that. Hearing what Oming said, Yu Lily subconsciously wanted to laugh, but when she curled her lips, she couldn't smile. Do you think it's because of the 2 children I had miscarried that she's punishing me? Don't let your imagination run wild. The more you think about it, the more ridiculous it becomes. Why are you so superstitious? Oming pinched her nose and said unhappily, Did old Mrs. Shen teach you to say that? Yu Lily slapped his hand away and rebuked. How could that be? I just feel that way. Who knows? That old lady is very strange. She claims to be a fortune teller. Lately, you've been calling her so frequently. TSK. It's hard to say. Yu Lily stretched out her leg and kicked him. Why aren't you going to work? Are you abandoning the company? It's okay. My father is here. Oming's body fell down again. I'm someone who took marriage leave. Yu Lily looked up at him and asked, How much longer do you have before your marriage leave? Indefinitely. Anyway, my father is here to take care of it. Yu Lily's lips curved. How can that be? Your mother will have something to say about it. I'm doing this for their own good, Oming said. Look at how old they are. If they stay together, it will affect their relationship. F*CK. What kind of twisted logic is that? Why are you asking this? Do you have any plans? Yu Lily thought about it and said, Why don't we make a trip to the capital in the next few days? Why would we go to the capital? Oming asked. I heard that there's a very efficacious temple in the capital, where people can pray for children. Yu Lily said hesitantly. As expected, when she saw Oming's expression change, she quickly waved her hands and said, I'm not superstitious. I just think it's better to believe in something than to believe in it. Oming didn't believe in such nonsense, but there were some things that you had to believe in. Although old Mrs. Shun was full of nonsense, when she told Qiao Ziqing's fortune, most of it was correct. Oming sighed deeply and said, Well, I'll go see the old lady and get to know her better. When Yu Lily heard that, a smile appeared on her face. She opened her arms and hugged him tightly. Hubby, I love you. Go to work. Oming was speechless. You want me to go to work because you love me? That's right. Otherwise, People will say that you're unable to extricate yourself from your beauty. If they say that I'm a femme fatale, that would be terrible. It's okay, I don't care. The company won't collapse even if I don't go there. Ahem, actually, if you're at home, I won't be able to finish my work. I haven't even finished my drawings for this week. I have to hand them in 2 days. I won't make it in time. In the end, Oming was chased away by Yulili. The day was peaceful. The next day, Yulili woke up early. She glanced at her phone and waited for Uncle Wen's message. But just like that, an entire morning passed. It wasn't until after lunch that when Fenglin sent a message. On WeChat, the first message was a picture. When Yulili saw it, she blinked and felt a little disappointed. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt terrible. She felt the urge to cry. Pursing her lips, Yulili's fingers tapped on the keyboard and asked, "Whose is it?" It seemed a little redundant to ask such a question. Chapter 1364. Yulili's heart was a little empty and disappointed. Even though she had already known the outcome, when the truth was revealed to her, Yulili still felt unhappy. When Fenglin didn't answer her directly, instead he sent another picture. The name on it was eye-catching, Zhen Xianlang. Yulili was stunned when she saw it. Zhen Xianlang? The 0000 belonged to Zhen Xianlang? Following that, when Fenglin sent another photo over. When Fenglin's mind went blank, Yulili's hands trembled. Covering her mouth, Yulili's eyes were moist. When Fenglin. Her blood relationship with Wen Fenglin was, in other words, her father was the man she had always liked. The uncle she had always liked. Ding dong. Her phone rang again. Wen Fenglin, where are you? There was no one at home. Oming had gone to the office. Yulili's heart was racing. Her hands were trembling. She replied to Wen Fenglin's message. At home. Wen Fenglin, you in Xiao's new house? Give me the address. Daddy will look for you. Daddy will look for you. Daddy. Those 2 words seemed to have been in her life for a very, very long time. At the same time they were late. The sudden arrival left Yulili at a loss. She couldn't accept it. It was something to be happy about. But at that moment, Yulili couldn't stop her tears from flowing. Sitting on the sofa, Yulili stared at the row of words on the phone screen and suddenly burst into tears. There had been no warning. She didn't even know what she was crying about. But the emptiness in her heart could only be filled by crying like that. The sound of her unbridled crying was very loud in the empty villa. Yulili cried as she called Oming. The call was quickly answered. Oming seemed busy on the other end. The voice was a little noisy. Hello. Oming's voice came through. His unique voice was magnetic and charming. When Yulili heard that voice, she felt even more wronged. She sobbed and called out, "Hubby." Oming was in a meeting. The company's top management was reporting on the first quarter of the year. When Oming heard the crying on the other end of the line, his heart skipped a beat. He stood up abruptly and asked, "What's wrong?" The voice of the company executive stopped abruptly. Boo-hoo. Yulili was sobbing so hard that she couldn't even form a complete sentence. Oming's expression was grave. He turned around and walked out quickly. "Where are you?" he asked. As he spoke, he had already disappeared, leaving the people in the conference room looking at each other, not knowing what to do next. He quickly rushed home. When he opened the door, he saw Yulili sitting on the sofa in a daze. Her eyes were red, and so was her nose. It was obvious that she had been crying. Oming strode forward and pulled her into his arms. He asked in a low voice, "What's wrong? What happened?" "Oming." Yulili buried her face in his arms and said, "The paternity test results are out." Chapter 1365. Yulili laughed when she heard Oming's words. She looked up at him with a pair of watery eyes and said, "I found my father." Oming was stunned. He looked at her and asked, "Who is it?" "It's Ding Dong." Before Yulili could finish her sentence, the doorbell rang. Oming ignored it. He looked down at Yulili and asked in a low voice, "Who is it?" "He's here." Yulili looked toward the door. Oming frowned. After he released her, he strode toward the door. When he opened the door, he saw Wen Fenglin. Oming was shocked. "Uncle Wan." When Fenglin's eyes were slightly red under his round-rimmed glasses, but the dimples on his cheeks showed that he was in a good mood. "Where's Lily?" Before Oming could speak, a voice came from inside. "I'm here." Lily's voice wasn't soft. Soon, Oming heard the sound of footsteps running out from inside. When Fenglin looked inside, at the same time, Lily could see what was going on. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Oming was baffled. He had only been at work for one morning. Why had the two of them become like this? Come in and have a seat." Lily waved at Wen Fenglin and quickly pulled Oming in. "Do you want something to drink?" she asked. "No, I'm just here to see you." When Fenglin walked in and sat down on the sofa, his eyes were fixed on Lily. "Lily, I really didn't expect this." As he spoke, his eyes reddened. He lowered his head. "So Sienna left me a child. She's such a beautiful and adorable daughter. I really didn't expect this." Lily saw that he was moved. She lowered her head and chuckled. "I didn't expect that the uncle painter, that I've always respected, would actually be my father." As father and daughter spoke, their eyes reddened. They looked at each other and smiled. The atmosphere was just warm. Oming stood beside them and smiled silently. Everything that happened next seemed to be a matter of course. When Fenglin had bought a house near Kingstown, it wasn't big, with 2 bedrooms and a living room. It was enough for him and his daughter. When the news got out, everyone knew that the vagrant painter, Wen Fenglin, had finally chosen a place to settle down. Many old friends from previous years sent their congratulations. Just as they were about to check in, Wen Fenglin even held a banquet. The purpose of the banquet was not only to celebrate that he was no longer a vagabond, but more importantly, to introduce his daughter to the outside world. Looking at the aunties and uncles around her, who were obviously very familiar with Wen Fenglin, Lily didn't shy away. She greeted them with a smile and introduced herself. "My name is Wen Lily." In May, the temperature in the imperial capital was much lower than in the south. By the time Oming, Lily, and Wen Fenglin got off the plane, it was already evening. The weather was a little chilly. Although old Mrs. Shun was getting on in years, she was still very playful. When she saw them from afar, she jumped up and shouted, "Lily! Lily! Grandma is here!" Hearing the old lady's voice, Lily smiled, waved at her, and quickly ran toward her. "You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.